Thank you, Mayor. The Mesa Board met in closed session on the items listed on the closed session agenda regarding item 3.1.1. The board conducted an evaluation of the city manager, and direction was given to the city manager. Regarding item 3.2.1, the Mesa Board met to discuss the terms and conditions of employment relative to the city manager.
Okay, and then may I move that we form a subcommittee so that the city manager has some folks that she can talk to about this issue before we have our next closed session meeting?
Right, so the Mesa Board would like to be able to form a board, to designate representatives to continue further negotiations with the city manager. Is that correct?
And we could do that right now?
You can do that now.
Then I would move that the mayor and the vice mayor are the subcommittee to have these negotiations, initial negotiations with the city manager.
Second.
So we have a motion by the mayor and a second by Councilmember Davis. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any noes? Abstentions? Motion carries. And
Okay. That's the conclusion of my report. Thank you.
thank you. That adjourns this meeting. And we are moving on to a special study session of the Emeryville City Council. It is 6:10 p.m. Please note we are all still here, and will you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please note we are all still here. And at this time, I'll entertain public comments on the study session items, which are the Local Hazard Mitigation Plan and Climate Action Plan and the noise ordinance. Is there anyone who wishes to speak? I think I have one speaker card. Here, do you want to speak at this time, or would you like to hear the presentation first? Okay. You will, but you can speak now as well. It's up to you.
Sharon Wilshire, Emeryville Artists Cooperative, and I think when you had your last study session, I mentioned the same thing, and it's kind of down the line once you actually have a revised ordinance or updated ordinance, that if there's any way that the city could notify all the businesses in
Yes.
town about these changes, and I don't know if there's information maybe on business license, et cetera, you know, so that it gets to whoever's in charge of facilities, it would be really helpful. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak at this time? Okay. Let's move on to item 4.1, Local Hazard Mitigation Plan and Climate Action Plan Update. Lori.
Mayor Martinez, City Council members, I am Lori Elephant, Management Analyst in Human Resources and the Project Coordinator for the Local Hazard Mitigation Plan Update. I will begin the study session with a quick overview of the Local Hazard Mitigation Plan Update, after which I'll be followed by Nancy Humphrey, the Environmental Program Supervisor, and Faye Mock, our Civic Spark intern, who will be presenting on the Climate Action Plan Update. So why do we need a local hazard mitigation plan update? Well, one, it's required. It's mandated by the Disaster Mitigation Act of 2000 to receive any mitigation funding pre or post disaster. But it also allows us to be proactive and not reactive, and it helps us reduce the potential for the loss of life, injury, or property damage. And it can help us identify hazards that affect the city and actions that we can take to reduce any losses from those hazards, and establishes a coordinated process to implement the plan. So what is hazard mitigation? Hazard mitigation is any sustained action taken to reduce or eliminate long-term risk to people and property from natural or man-made hazards and their effects. For FEMA only really requires that you address in your plans natural hazards, and that's fire, floods, and earthquake. However, we have decided to expand it to include more natural hazards than that, as well as man-made hazards. FEMA, since our last plan, which was written in 2009, has really upped the ante on how the plan has to be written. And it has to be updated every 5 years, and now it has to consist of 6 elements that must be described in the process, in the body of your plan. And they are a description of the planning process, hazard identification and analysis, mitigation strategy, plan review, evaluation, and implementation, state requirements, and then finally adoption. FEMA considers the process to be just as important as the plan itself, and so they've required us now to do a lot of community outreach from the beginning, the middle, and the end, so before, during, and after the plan. And so the regulations require for mitigation plan approval that all stakeholders and the public be given opportunities to be involved before, during, and after the plan implementation. So for the first step in our process, we created a community hazard survey, which we had put up on our website, and we sent out emails, and we had it in the e-news, and we invited community members to comment on what hazards they concern them in the city. And we also invited community members, if interested, to be part of our planning team. We convened our first planning team update meeting on June 18th, 2015. The team consisted of 2 members of the community, a representative from Alameda County Fire, and then staff member from almost every department in the city. At the first meeting, we looked at the risks that had been previously identified in our local hazard mitigation plan, the risks that ABAG had identified in their regional local hazard mitigation plan, and then all the hazards that had been identified in our community survey. We had received 52 responses to the survey. From that, we looked at which ones were common. We looked at which ones that really didn't apply to us. For example, landslides was in ABAG's regional plan. We don't really have an issue of landslides here in Emeryville, so obviously that one was taken off the board. And from that list, the 3 lists, we identified 9 hazards to the city. And these are the hazards in rank order. I know that's kind of hard to see. We do have some forms that we passed out to everybody, so to make it a little bit easier to see. The 9 major hazards were earthquakes, hazardous materials, fires, and these are in rank order. Climate change, floods, protests and civil unrest, infrastructure utility failure, terrorism, and biological threats. Over the course of the next 7 months, we then brainstormed mitigation ideas, and we looked at each, and we had to evaluate each mitigation idea for its feasibility, its social benefits, economic benefits, its environmental improvement, and its meeting community objectives. And from those, then we selected 45 mitigation ideas.
Wow.
At which time, and of those, we categorized them in either high, medium, low priority, or as long-term, or something that we're already doing. And then, so this is the chart that has all of our mitigation ideas on it, and it's on the flip side of the handout that we had. And so then our next steps are to continue with the community outreach, and Nancy and Faye will talk more to that at the end of their presentation, to obtain council's input or any comments on what we've been doing so far in the process to date, to finish writing the plan, which I hope to have done by the end of June. We would then submit how the process works is you submit the plan to the state first for their approval. They submit it to FEMA, and usually FEMA, if they approve it, FEMA will automatically approve it, and then FEMA approves it pending adoption approves it, but with pending adoption by the council. And so then we would bring it back to council once it's approved for formal adoption, and we have 1 year to do that once it's approved by FEMA. And so does everybody have any questions before we?
What's the timeline on your next steps? Can you plug in some dates there that we could look at?
So we are doing our community outreach this next week. So we're having our 3 meetings, and then after that, I'm hoping by June 30th, I will have the plan written and submitted to the state.
Now, so this meeting would be the council's input?
Mm-hmm.
There's no opportunity after you have written the plan, before you submit it to the state, for the council to review it?
Oh, no, we would come back.
Additional
We will bring it back for review. We just wouldn't ask you to adopt it because you really want FEMA's approval first, because we don't want to keep coming back and forth. And so the way that the state has recommended is that you get FEMA approval first before you do formal adoption. But yes, we would bring it back to the council again.
I would appreciate it if you would include that second bite of the council after you write the plan,
yes.
before you send it to FEMA.
Yes.
Does everybody else feel the same way about that?
Yeah, I agree.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah.
Lori, I just have a quick question. What are tree gators?
So tree gators, Piedmont was doing this, and that's where we got the idea from. They are these green bags that zip, and you put them around the base of a tree, and they have pockets in them that you fill with water, and then it slowly drips into the roots of the tree. So during a drought, it helps with the immature trees, and you don't waste a lot of water. It takes like 3 days for the water to drain down, so you end up not wasting water by trying to water the trees. So.
Thank you.
Since we're getting definitions, this is I had to look up bioswale for myself. But would you mind defining bioswale and let people know why it's so important, why it's in the high priority category?
So, Maurice, you may be able to answer this better than I can.
The bioswale is essentially a vegetated swale that will help to treat stormwater. The stormwater where we really want to direct is the stormwater out on Powell Street that floods in that area. And what we want to try to do is build a swale that would run over the East Shore State Park land that would go over land into the bay, as opposed to in the culvert that is full of mud right now. Mm-hmm. And so that's a high priority, because as the landfill settles, we continue to have more flooding there. So.
Thank you.
I have another question.
Okay, of course.
Under rank 9, biological threats, you have the biotech companies. How do our biotech companies in town feel about being named as one of the
A biological threat.
And this is because, what, of a failure in the laboratory, and explosion
right.
in the laboratory?
If something should happen within the laboratory, yes. Or in an earthquake, or.
Are there specific substances or organisms that?
I don't believe, my understanding is that we're not really privy to know, that we can only know what kind of category that they're in. And there is a list that building has that has all the lists of facilities that have some kind of high hazard.
Sensitive materials.
Yes. But
They were never allowed to do highly toxic and airborne. That's my understanding, that the previous council said no to
Right.
airborne, highly toxic. So it sounds perhaps to the public like it might be that, but it's not that, because those companies cannot do that.
I think we're ready for the next part of the presentation. Thank you,
Thank you.
Lori.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the council. I'm Nancy Humphrey, Environmental Programs Supervisor, and with me I have Hoife Mock, who is our Civic Spark Fellow this year. Civic Spark is California's AmeriCorps program focused on building capacity for climate adaptation and climate planning at the local government level. So she's been with us full-time. She will be here 11 months total full-time, and you'll see in our presentation how far we've gotten with her help. So she did a lot of the number crunching that we're going to talk about, so she's going to handle those slides when we get to them. Oh, and I was going to tell your background. She's from San Leandro, local, and she has a PhD in environmental sciences from the University of Melbourne, Australia.
Ooh.
Wow. So she's qualified. All right, so just like Lori said, why are we updating the Climate Action Plan? As you know, we have a Climate Action Plan from 2008, and at that time the goals were to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 25% by 2020. And I talked to you last year, or some of you last year, about some of the challenges that we have with that. We are making progress both as a city and as a community. One of the challenges we have with data is how to present it, and Faye will show you a couple of ways that we're looking at data to try and really get to information that makes sense. It's required. We have new targets in addition to the 2020 25% reduction target, which is enacted, it's AB 32. There are now, there's an executive order from Governor Brown, which has not yet been put into regulation, but it will be, saying that we have to get to 40% reduction by 2030 and 80% reduction by 2050. I think I'm getting ahead of myself on these slides. Those numbers, that 80% number is what would, if we all did that, that would keep us below 2 degrees centigrade temperature increase worldwide, which is what the Conference of Parties, the Paris Agreement, agreed upon in this past December. So, among other things, we have the Compact of Mayors, which we've signed on to, which also codifies some of that stuff. We have reporting on that. And also we know that the community and that you as a council are interested in this, so we really want to stay ahead of it. We don't want to get behind. We don't have a lot of time to do a lot. Our vulnerability is high in some ways. Sea level rise is a big one for us, and extreme weather. And that's why we're here with Lori today, is because our two plans are informing each other. And we're going out to the community together, which I think is really useful for both plans. And the potential impacts of climate change are global for us. That could be everything from food security, jobs, your house being underwater, power interruptions if the grid is not stable, really public health. The impacts are potentially large. Also, we have been a leader. Our 2008 plan was one of the first plans. We want to stay right up at the top and make sure we really do our best to meet these new targets. There's always new technology. Every month, every week, there's something new. It's always going to be changing, so we've got to stay current. So, I covered some of this already. So far, we have had, since 2004, community-wide, a 4 to 8% reduction in GHGs overall. That the difference in those numbers is whether you're counting local traffic or also freeway and state highway traffic. That's the difference. If we do it on a residential per capita basis, that number gets to 28 to 31% decrease, which meets our 2020 goal. And I think there's an argument to be made for using a per capita basis in a rapidly growing community. Our municipal operations, when we compare apples to apples, and you'll see we have some data now that we didn't have before. If we compare apples to apples, we've had an 11% decrease in our municipal operations GHG emissions since 2004. So, we're updating the climate action plan. The main changes or additions are we're adding an inventory for 2014, which Faye has worked hard on, and she has also done a lot of work backtracking and looking at our old data and making sure that everything is consistent throughout. We are looking at climate mitigation, which is actions we can take to lower our emissions to 2030. We're also looking at adaptation to 2030, which is a large part of where we overlap with Lori. And then we're looking at vision for 2050, because we can't predict what technologies will be in place in 10 years, much less 35 years. So we're getting to vision for 2050. And now give you some of the numbers, I'm going to turn it over to Faye. All right.
Great, thanks, Nancy. So this slide here shows numbers from the community greenhouse gas inventory we have from 2004, 2010, and 2014. So when we're reporting to the Compact of Mayors and other platforms, we will report the all traffic data, which includes emissions from the state highways. But for the purpose of this presentation, we're only looking at the local traffic, which will exclude the emissions from the state highways. And the reason why why we're doing that is because the city of Emeryville primarily only regulates traffic for local roads. And so when we're looking at the numbers, it'll be easier to see whether our mitigation strategies are actually effective if we're only concentrating on the local traffic. So from these numbers here, we can actually see that we do have reductions from 2004 to 2014. On a residential per capita basis, we have a 30% reduction from the local traffic level, and then 18% reduction at the all traffic level. And overall, looking at the total emissions at the local traffic level, there's approximately a 7% decrease, which is approximately 9,700 metric tons. So this is in contrast to the all traffic situation, where there was actually an increase of 8% over the last 10 years. So obviously, transportation will be is a big contributor to our community emissions. So transportation and community commercial energy are two big sectors where we'll want to concentrate our mitigation strategies for moving forward and beating our targets. So these numbers here show the greenhouse gas inventory for the municipal inventory, so again, 2004 to 2014. We're unable to get data for the employee commute for the baseline years. So after adjusting for that missing data, we have approximately an 11% reduction for the last 10 years. So building energy and streetlights are where we're doing the best. Our participation in PG&E's energy efficiency programs has led to reductions in both these areas, as you see from those numbers there. But there has been a significant increase in emissions in relation to the employee commute, and this is the biggest contributor to municipal emissions across the board. So this is definitely an area where we want to concentrate, looking at different incentives or other potential mitigation strategies for reductions. So kind of the takeaways from these two comparisons is that we're on a good trend for reducing our emissions, but there's definitely a lot of room for improvement, especially in the community inventory area. And so there's a lot of, especially to meet the really aggressive state targets moving forward. So there's a lot of strategies that we would want to consider in moving forward. That being said, the type of strategies that we are implementing, the programs we are implementing right now, we do have successes so far. So some numbers here, we have a 35% reduction in the solid waste disposal from the last 10 years. Our participation in the community-wide PG&E programs has led to the removal of approximately 1,600 cars from the road. There's been over 300% increase in participation in the Bike to Work Day since 2000. And our solar panels at the City Hall give us an average of 14% monthly energy savings. So we are doing well. There's a lot of programs that are working, and there's a lot of additional benefits to those in addition to the emissions savings. So we're saving money, we're reducing emissions, and so these are programs that we would like to continue. In addition to that, this graph comes from the consumption-based greenhouse gas inventory from UC Berkeley and the Bay Area Air Quality Management District. So this style of inventory basically looks at the emissions embedded in the services and the goods that were consumed here, rather than just looking at the geographical boundary of the city. So from this cradle to grave methodology, we see that Emeryville actually has the lowest per household carbon footprint for the Bay Area, which is a really great thing to promote. So we've promoted this on our sustainability website, and this is a trend that we'd like to continue moving forward. Yes.
Can I ask you a question, Faye? Do you have any indications on why we're the best on this list? I'm very happy about it. Trust me, I'm very pleased. And I can guess as to why the folks in Piedmont need more in services and goods and food and housing and transportation. But why are we doing so well? on this graph?
I think definitely in terms of comparison to Piedmont, where our residents are flying less. So there are certain assumptions kind of built into the methodology where if your residents were of a certain socioeconomic status, then there were certain assumptions based on how often they would fly, what kind of brands or food they were consuming. So those kind of assumptions based on the class of the citizen would then translate to the associated emissions for that city. So. So the takeaway from this graph is that, again, we're doing well in certain perspectives, but there's a lot to do in the future, especially to meet those targets. And so.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to add to what you answered about that was also our density is high. And so we get a lot of benefit from dense development in terms of energy savings. So that's another way that is reflected.
Diane, I have a question for Nancy. On one of your former slides, you have a value for wastewater. It starts out at 14, and it drops to 1.1. What is that?
Yeah. So I believe that between 2004 and 2010, there might have been some accounts that were mislabeled in the PG&E list. So we're tracking it down with our PG&E rep right now. The way that that particular category is calculated is by the label on the account. So if it's not labeled as a water account, it's not included in that category. So the amount of energy that we use in total is included there, but it just may not necessarily be under wastewater. So
I hope you go back and look at that again, because if I were FEMA and I was looking at that chart, I think somebody had missed something.
Yeah. So we are following up on that right now.
Good, very good.
You mentioned, this is for either of you, I'm not sure who can answer this, but you can keep track of solar installations on municipal buildings, but can you keep track of solar installations and put them into the matrix on private property?
Yeah, so PG&E gives an overall summary of the amount of solar that's installed on both residential and commercial properties. So we have a KW capacity total that we can report to, like Compact Mayors and other platforms. Yeah, but I don't believe we have a KWH for that. It's just the capacity of the panels.
But the total KWH that we're generating from solar.
Speak into the mic.
Thank you. The total KWH that we're generating from solar will come off the purchase total from PG&E. So it kind of backdoor that's contributing to our reductions.
I just want to say that I think it's great that we're able to talk about the things that are under our control in terms of the Climate Action Plan and our municipal efforts. But I also think that maintaining the context of what's happening around us, especially in terms of transit and emissions and unhealthful impacts, is really, really important, because we could be putting forth a lot of effort, doing tremendous work, and we still can't control our destiny. And I think it's important for the people of Emeryville and for the electeds to keep that in mind whenever we have kind of a larger stage to talk about these issues. So I'm glad that there's an emphasis on what we're doing within the city, but I just want to make sure that those two things are always linked.
Right, and we are tracking both and reporting both. It was actually, I asked Faye to take the total traffic out of the charts just because it was sort of a little too busy, but we are tracking. We're going to report those and track those in our Climate Action Plan, and I think we're going to be trying to track the consumption-based as that technology or methodology evolves, because I think all those ways are just different ways of shining the light on the same thing.
Okay, all right. Yeah.
So yeah, just sort of along those same lines, I just wanted to hope that you continue to highlight the impact that single occupancy vehicles, not just from our municipal employees, but from other folks who work in town and shop in town, how that affects the greenhouse gas emissions, because that's another place where we hope to move the needle. There are different ways to do it. There are ways that the city has already begun to explore, such as with a comprehensive parking plan in the future. So we want to make sure that we keep mentioning these things.
Yeah, and that is a big effort. It's a big issue, and as I showed last year, our data show that our drive out alone commuting is very low. But our drive-in alone commuting is very high.
That's right.
So that is obviously, that shines a light on, yes, this is a place we need to work on it. So the parking management plan is clearly one of those ways.
I just would like, if it's possible, for, say, if we were to get the PUC rules changed to allow for microgrids for our commercial structures that would allow all of our empty single-story warehouses to generate power for adjoining businesses, what effect that might have on our climate going forward. That, to demonstrate that for our local assembly and Senate representatives to the state might really help our cause in making this factor unique to Emeryville situation. Would help us persuade perhaps a state law that would allow us to really reduce our commercial power.
Yes, and as you know, we supported Berkeley's recent grant application for a microgrid for their municipal downtown facilities, but it's a demonstration project. That's everything about it is transferable. That's the plan. So, and they did get that grant. So they are going to be doing a microgrid downtown Berkeley and transferring all that information. And we work closely with the Berkeley staff, so we're going to be right on top of that. I'm with you. Yeah. All right.
I guess I had one more question. Looking at the increase in the employee commute, when you start looking at that data, what do you attribute that to? Is that the rising costs of housing, or why are we having, do you drill down to that level, or are you just tracking that it's?
Do you have an answer? It could have to do with what data were collected.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of different possible reasons. This could be from the rising cost of housing, and I know there were a number of people who drove in from very far cities of like an hour and a half commutes. So I think that's probably something that has shifted a little bit since 2010. But there was also more people that participated in the commute survey this time around compared to last year. So it may just be that it was more representative of the employees and what's actually happening now. So the amount of data that's collected is still around, I think, 26% of the employees. So it's not entirely representative. We had to extrapolate quite a lot. So the more data that we can collect, the better, the more accurate that can be in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And just on that point too, we're looking for budget now to just start doing Clipper Direct with employees, which is a program that the city administers but only pays us $3 a month per participating employee, and the employee gets to use pre-tax money for their Clipper cards.
Yeah.
So we're just trying to push the needle anytime we can. So this slide is also super busy, but I just wanted to point out that the city has been, for years, very active in this arena, and some of those completed things are really things we're still maintaining and operating. The things that are underway now are all those programs that we're either working on developing or implementing now, and just as an aside, we have plenty of other programs that are not listed here that impact climate. You know, our development regs, our planning and zoning and all of that feeds into this, and our transit hubs and all of that. But this is just what we are doing on climate and sustainability. I also want to point out there in the continuing or planned ones, 2 of those, the first 2 will be on tonight's agenda. And then we'll be back with this SunShares program. We're putting off, but we'll one day address a building energy savings ordinance. We're working on electric vehicle charging at City Hall, and we're getting more and more call for it in the public as well. We're going to have a green infrastructure plan for stormwater catchment and treatment. Environmentally preferable purchasing for city operations is another big push, and we're getting our green team together to work on that. Somebody from every department to make sure we cover everybody's needs and concerns. And we are applying now for recognition through the Beacon Award, which is a program, an Alameda County program. And we are doing the Compact of Mayors reporting, which, depending on how you do it, is a little onerous, but will produce a lot of good data overall. Next steps, I just want to go back and say, my pitch is, obviously we need to maintain some staffing level for these things to go forward, and we also have to prioritize and triage as we go based on being a small city with limited resources. But that's a lot to do, and we really want to do all of it and more. As Lori mentioned, and as you have these postcards on your desks, we have Climate Action Plan and Local Hazard Mitigation Plan public workshops coming. We planned it so we had a Saturday morning, this coming Saturday at 10, a daytime one, 11 to 1 on Tuesday the 10th, so that we could get people from the business community, and then a Tuesday evening one, 6 to 8, that same day the 10th, to try and get residents for whom the weekend is already booked. If you have people in the community, businesses, people, whoever contacts, please let them know about it. The more voices we hear about this, we're at a little bit different point than Lori. We're more on the upswing of the plan development rather than the down, but we need input on both sides. We're hoping to get a draft climate action plan to you by July. And we're going to then continue to work on programs. Phase term is up at the beginning of September, so we really want to get as much done when we have this, the engine that could here working on it for us, and be back here in July with the public input integrated into our climate action plan and see where we go from there. Okay. And if you have questions, as you've learned, about the local hazard mitigation plan, you can speak with Lori. For climate action plan, you can speak with me. And some of you know about our sustainability website, which Faye developed, which is emeryville.org/sustainability. And there are ways to learn about it and actions you can take. That's how it's organized. So it's meant to be really useful for all members of the community. So that's it. Do you have any other questions for me?
Good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can you email me the slideshow?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
To everyone, can we just,
Yes.
Thanks. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I will invite the public to make comments at this point, if anyone would like to comment on the previous study session.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought it was good, Joe Lutz. I thought it was a good presentation. I was a little bit surprised, and maybe I missed it, there was nothing on the Emeryville round. Now, this is I saw the 1,600 cars which we took off the road. I'm sure the Emeryville round was a large part of that, if not more, and it would be nice to see the Emeryville round, what we could do to increase that and help what we're trying to do. Thank you.
But just so that you know,
Nancy, you can respond on Mike.
We are very aware of the Emeryville round and what it has done for us. I think we had 1.6 million, roughly, boardings, and that's a huge thing. And I think that has a lot to do with why we're doing so well at outbound commuting. We just need to get the inbound people to use it, and one of the other things that will help us with that, help us add capacity, is when we add bike share, we'll pull some people off Emeryville Round. That'll make some space for some extra people, because at the rush hours it can be very crowded. So we're hoping to add capacity to that system by pulling some people off onto the bike share.
So we're going to add that to your report then?
Yeah, sure, and so much more. Okay.
Great, thank you. All right, we have another study session item. It's the amendments to the City of Emeryville noise ordinance. We've got our city attorney, Mr. Gina, to present.
Thank you, Mayor. All right. Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. I am Michael Gina, City Attorney, and I am presenting the second study session on the noise ordinance. This is sort of a joint effort between the City Attorney's Office and the Police Department. Back in February, you heard your first study session, and that was presented by Sergeant Dower. He's also here to answer any questions you may have. The purpose of this study session is to review and confirm the direction that we heard from you back in February. Secondly, we have a series of questions to ask you going forward regarding noise standards and noise waivers for construction activities. The staff is making a recommendation that in order to further develop the noise ordinance, the next step to assist us would be to retain the assistance of a sound consultant who can provide us technical information and give context to staff and to the City Council for setting objective noise standards in the city, and then also to take any further direction from you. So that's the brief outline of my presentation, and I'll step through this quickly because I'm aware that we've got a full agenda ahead of us tonight. So back in February, staff had presented a series of ordinances from 14 other jurisdictions. What we did was we tried to give you a sense of how other jurisdictions are measuring or are regulating noise in their various areas. And we identified 10 ways that different cities regulate noise. Emeryville does some of them. And so we'd asked you, of the areas that we don't regulate, what would you like to see in the future? And so the various criteria that we looked at are there on the slides. I think I won't step through them, but one of the things that we did hear from the council loud and clear is that currently our noise ordinance does not have a basis for objective criteria for measuring noise. So we don't set decibel levels in any area of the city to decide whether or not there's a violation of the noise ordinance. And so one of the things that we heard from the council back in February is that you do have an interest in setting objective noise levels measured in decibels for the updated noise ordinance. This is just a brief slide. This is a slide of the table that we presented to you. It's also in the staff report. On the left side describes the different cities that we looked at, and the top of the slide there are the various areas of regulation. And then, so from this table, what we heard from the council from that study session was that you want to, in the updated noise ordinance, you want to continue to have subjective criteria as a way to measure whether or not there's a violation. So what is the enforcing officer here? But you also wanted, as I said, you also wanted to establish objective criteria measured in decibel levels. And if a enforcing officer takes a measurement and the measurement is above the standard that you set, the officer can then cite for a violation of the noise ordinance. In terms of factors to consider, the direction that we received from the council was that you wanted to consider factors such as duration, time, frequency, tonal quality, vibration, those characteristics of sound in order to determine whether or not there was a violation of the ordinance, and you wanted those factors to be considered in setting those standards for the noise ordinance. Exemptions, you indicated that you wanted to allow exemptions from the noise ordinance standards for school events such as a game or permitted community events. In terms of waivers, this is a question that we have for the council tonight. Our ordinance currently allows for noise waivers for construction activities, and you regularly hear them before you here at the council level. One characteristic that some other cities do have is waivers for non-construction activities. So somebody's going to have an event at their location. Do you want to allow for exceptions for those non-construction related activities? And if so, would those waivers be given by the council, or would they be considered at the staff level with perhaps an administrative appeal or appeal before the council? Animal noise, we currently regulate animal noise separately in a different area of the municipal code, and so you asked us to consolidate that in the upcoming, in an amended noise ordinance. And then mandatory warnings. Some jurisdictions require that the enforcement officer issue a warning prior to citation, and what we heard from the council is that you're not interested in requiring mandatory warnings, and that the officer has the discretion to immediately cite. So that's the direction that we had heard, and if you just think about that for a minute, and I'll move on. So the next area that I wanted to talk about is the noise limits and setting objective noise limits, and how I characterize this as sort of a set or static limit versus a graduated over time limit. Here, what we've got on, pardon me. There we go. On the left side of the screen here, we have different uses in the city, and that's broken up into day and nighttime. And then these are two example cities, Hayward and Roanoke Park. What these cities do is they set, if we'll take the residential use for a minute, Hayward sets a residential nighttime noise limit at 60 to 70, depending on the zone in the city, but let's say 60 decibels for one of their residential districts. And 70 for their nighttime. Roanoke Park ranges from 45 to 55. Any noise that's measured above the 60 decibel limit is considered a violation, no matter how long that noise is occurring. So whether it's a noise that occurs above the 60 decibel limit for a minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, it is immediately a violation after the officer has taken the reading. And that goes down the line there for the different uses. Contrast that with the model in Berkeley and Santa Maria. On the left side of the screen there, again, you see the different types of uses broken up by day and night. And then across the top there, you see time limits. And the way that this is set up in Berkeley, again, taking the exterior residential for an example. The way that Berkeley ordinance is set up is that they say that for the exterior residential zones at nighttime, if you have a decibel reading you could have a decibel reading of up to 45 decibels for up to 30 minutes. And then after 30 minutes, if you're still measuring 45 or above, you're in violation. And then moving to the right across the table, Berkeley then says you could have, for that same exterior residential use at night, you can have a decibel reading of up to 50 decibels for up to 15 minutes. and then anything above that time limit at 50 decibels is considered a violation. And as you see, the noise that you're able to make goes up to 60 decibels for a short period of time. So you can have what I would see on a sound profile would be a spike in noise over time. So
is that time, excuse me, over 24 hours, or is that over
it's over
8 hours? Or?
It's essentially over, it's at the time that the enforcing officer goes out there. So the idea is that if the enforcement officer is out there, the longest amount of time that they'll be there would be 30 minutes to see if there is a reading at 45 decibels for up to 30 minutes. And if they are there for 35 minutes or 31 minutes and it's 45 or above, then they're able to cite. So again, I mean,
do we have any information if Berkeley ever followed through on this cockamamie setup? That's ridiculous.
I don't have any information about what their enforcement history is actually like.
Ridiculous.
But as I say, it is a model and an option for you to consider. Like I said, if we were to graph this, you would see over time, you'd see allowable spikes in noise for short periods of time. And so one thing that staff is asking the council to consider is between the two models, would you prefer to see a model that allows for gradations in noise or spikes in noise for short periods of time, or would you like to just set a standard limit for all hours of the day or night? So that's some feedback that we're looking for tonight.
Well, I have a question for Acting Captain Dower and our chief. If I know you just walked in, what's the capacity of responding officers to sit around for 30 minutes to see if a noise level is maintaining a certain decibel for that amount of time? Is that fair to ask?
Yeah, that's a fair question. It just depends on the day and the time. Some days we would have that luxury of 30 minutes, and some days, like today, we wouldn't.
Yeah. And I know we have a busy force.
So moving on, as to a sound consultant, so the council had asked for some information about setting objective criteria levels. So going back, going back here where we're seeing decibel ranges of anywhere from 45 to 80 decibels. And one of the questions we heard from you back in February is, well, what does 80 decibels sound like? What does 45 decibels sound like? And what does 45 decibels sound like at daytime versus the nighttime? And what would that sound like in different areas of the city? So, in the Triangle neighborhood versus right next to the freeway. And those are technical questions that we just don't have the capacity to provide answers to. And so what we're recommending is that in order to provide that information to you, to provide that context, we would need to retain the services of a sound consultant. I think that one of the things that they would be able to do would give us establish a baseline for us so that we understand what the ambient noise is at different times of the day and night and in different areas of the city. And then going from that baseline, you could then establish what you think is an acceptable range of noise above that baseline, again, for different times of day and night in different zones in the city. The sound consultant would also be able to, I think, give you some answers about how different types of noise or the different characterizations of sound may affect the perception of receiving that, so vibration, tone, frequency. In order to help you set those objective noise criteria standards, we're recommending that we obtain the services of a consultant.
I have a question.
Clarifying questions?
So with these different kinds of areas, commercial, residential, that the other cities use, is that specific to a building or to a zoning area?
Both. So if you look at their different ordinances, they talk about, so back Here, where I'm talking about residential and commercial zones, I summarize this for purposes of just clarity for tonight's presentation. But depending on the city, some cities will specify a particular zone, their R1 zone or their residential zone, and others will be more general about just all residential or all commercial.
So in our unique little city, we have a commercial building right up against a residential complex.
Absolutely. And I think that will be, that is hopefully some of the technical information that we're able to receive from them is taking into account the fact that you have a number of different uses right up next to each other on top of each other. We're a very mixed-use city. And I think that that a consultant will help us understand what is appropriate for a mixed-use city versus a city that is more residential in nature.
Or at least where the zones are discrete and apart from each other.
Yes, right, absolutely.
So we could expect from this consultant a real focus on mixed use.
Absolutely.
Because a large percentage of this city is mixed use zoning, and that's a lot different than pure residential, pure commercial, or pure industrial. So we really need someone who understands mixed use and what the components are of mixed use, so that we as a council can make some reasonable decisions, not based just on residential, commercial, or industrial. We are not that city.
Right.
So let's just stick to clarifying questions at the moment, so we can open this up for public comment.
Okay.
Any questions? Any further questions?
My last slide, which I'll leave here now, I just wanted to summarize again. The questions for the council, have we accurately identified the direction from your first study session? In terms of objective limits, are you interested in setting a set limit or graduated limits over time that allow for spikes in noise? In terms of noise waivers, do you want to allow noise waivers for non-construction activities? And which would be the body that would be granting those noise waivers. Is the council interested in obtaining the services of a sound consultant, and is there any additional direction you'd like to give us? That's the conclusion of my report. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Any more questions?
I have some questions, but I'd like to hear from the public.
Great. So I'll open this up for public comment. I have one speaker card. Would you like to speak first? Or all right. Kier Fulmer.
Evening, Mayor Martinez and City Council. We just wanted to mention again that we remain your collaborative partner in figuring this out, and that we've now had the opportunity to complete the 3 items that we said we would complete, which resulted in monthly meetings with Watergate, which have gone fabulously. I think that's pretty much it. We don't really have any more comments on this until something else is decided. Just wanted to remind you that that's where we are.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Again, Joe Lutz, Watergate. I have to second here, and I'd like to propose a resolution that she has to stay at Trader Vic's. She's done a magnificent job. We're very, very happy. I have a couple of comments on the ordinance, which just my view. On the duration thing, I would think we'd want a set limit because, EPD is so busy. It's we wouldn't want that. The second thing is we'd like, as residents, we'd like to know what equipment is going to be used so that maybe we could purchase it and then also have it certified by the equipment that the police have, so we could bring in our station. So we could, if we have a call, we can have an objective measurement saying, hey, yeah, this is definitely there, and not wasting the police time. I'm glad we're going to an objective thing because it's the only way to be fair to the residents and the businesses, and it also provides the business with a measure of what level of mitigations they may need to do. It may only be a little bit, or it may be a little bit more. And the last thing I'd like to say is on the waiver, the sound waiver thing, you'd have to be real careful about that from my perspective, because you don't want to give a unilateral sound waiver and have someone do 100 and 110 decibels for an hour. So if you're going to have a sound waiver, maybe it can go 20 decibels above what the normal limit is. And one other thing I forgot to mention was we have used decibels before. And if you recall, when the old Emeryville Village was being built, the east side that faced the tracks had to have a 55 decibel limit in the bedrooms. That's why they have triple pane windows. So we have used it in the past, and it might be something that the building department might even be interested in. So anyway, thank you very much, and thanks for all your support in this. It's been really good. Thanks.
Hi, Ron Freund. I live in the western part of the city. By the way, there may be people here that may get confused by the fact that either you have reversed identities or the nameplates are incorrectly placed.
Thank you, Ron.
I know we want diversity here, but that may be going too far. So I live in the Watergate area, and being in a large community, our quality of life is severely impacted by noise almost all day long. So I'd like a few things to be specifically added to the ordinance, or at least part of the ordinance, and that would be to identify the different kinds of machinery that are used in particular in landscaping and waste management. These would include lawnmowers, tree clippers, leaf blowers, especially gasoline-powered leaf blowers. Alternatives, and then also have the staff study what are cost-effective alternatives to these. I'd like to avoid the previous fights around the cost of cleaning and the cost of landscaping versus the noise that's created by especially gasoline-powered machinery. And during this study, I'm hoping that the city can provide some leadership in giving us quieter but cost-effective alternatives to the existing types of machinery used in both landscaping and waste management. I'd like the city to engage possibly with waste management on looking at alternatives. The garbage truck disposal is one of the loudest activities that goes on, and it is deafening during the few minutes that each one of these trucks tips the dumpsters into the trucks. And given that there's like 20 or 30 cities in the state that have all of these different limitations or bans on equipment, there must be some alternatives to the noise created by this, and or we could even go national. So I'd like that to be part of the study in preparation for the ordinance. And lastly, it'd be helpful to have an appendix of some kind so that when we hear the word 60 decibels, we know what that means. There's a whisper, and then there's a jackhammer. And I mean, as I understand it, decibels are not measured in mathematically, but logarithmically. So that 70 decibels, and tell me if I'm wrong, is much louder than 60. It's not like 16% louder. Is that correct?
That's what a sound consultant would be able to help us understand.
Well, I think you can look it up.
Good answer, Michael.
I think you can look that up in Google, to be honest with you. So the sound consultant would be definitely needed for studying the noise levels in different parts of the city. I'm not opposed to that. So it would be very helpful to have real-world equivalents, either in an appendix or somewhere, to allow people to comment on this. And the final is a question to the council. What is the process going forward on this? Are we going to have another study session? Is there going to be an ordinance proposed by a certain date?
I'll allow staff.
Where are we going?
So based on the feedback that you gave us tonight, if you asked us, if you green-lighted the retention of a sound consultant, staff would go and retain that consultant. We would, if necessary, we'd bring back a contract for your approval, and then we would go and get that study done, and we will check in with you. So this is the second study session. This is certainly not the last, and the idea is that we would give you periodic feedback at milestone moments of this process so that we are informing the council and we are informing the community of where we're going and making sure that the direction that we're going is one that is consistent with your vision of how you would like the ordinance to be set up.
Thank you. Mr. Freund, can I ask you some questions about your feedback?
You may.
It won't need into your 3 minutes,
As long
I
as
promise.
it's not too complex.
So, you know, you have concerns about landscaping, leaf blowers, waste management, that sort. Are these concerns limited to the Watergate complex, or are you concerned on behalf of the whole city?
Well, I think whatever you learn from looking at the municipal level maybe could be applied to a homeowners association. Mm-hmm. Because in the past there's been a lot of brushback or against some of these limitations, and since so many other cities have them, it would seem valuable to have the staff present those alternatives for us to see if they can be done cost effectively.
I think,
but that's definitely in the top of my mind, of course.
We might be able to add that to consideration for a consultant to study, but I would think that in terms of pushing the ordinance, if you folks at the HOA came down on your limitations for noise, that would give us some cover to go further. So well, I'm saying if you guys decide that leaf blowers and waste that you need to make changes, maybe the city will hear that on a level.
It's a controversial issue, let's put it that way. So the only thing I would say about the process is that it seems so open-ended. It might be useful for the council to set some time limit for where this process gets concluded.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on this item?
Good evening. My name is Eric Gascoigne. I live at 1093 45th Street. I'd like you guys to reconsider and not exempt schools from the noise ordinance. Noise is noise, and whatever changes are made to Emeryville's noise ordinance should be carefully thought out and comprehensive for dealing with any type of substantial noise complaint. As you know, there are only a few schools, private and public, in Emeryville. Don't you think it would be productive to ask the very few people who reside around these schools as to what they think? Do you truly believe that they would want to waive their rights as homeowners, residents, taxpayers, just for the single fact that their neighbors are a school? Maybe you already know of the possible problems that may arise with Emery Bay Village as the ECCL school population will triple at the very minimum. And they may not take to the increased noise levels very kindly. You need to truly explore these proposed changes to the noise ordinance and account for these foreseeable problems. All these issues need to be addressed one by one and not ignored by exemption. Thank you.
I'm not going to lecture you on the theory of sound. It's a whole book of physics about it. But one simple thing that can be done, and is fairly cheap, is to provide a wind that will be opposed to the source of sound. As you know, if you are downwind, you will get the sound real clearly. If you are a tailwind, it's the opposite, because really the air is the one that is the transportation of sound. And so if in front of the noise source. If you have a large fan, electric fan, then it will reduce the noise considerably. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? All right, let's have some discussion. Nora, have any thoughts?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, I was
Sorry, I didn't mean to catch
distracted.
you off guard.
I definitely think we should go out for a sound consultant. These are complex and very issues that affect everybody in this city, people who work here and people who live here. As far as the waivers are concerned, and the decisions on the non-construction activities and who it's to be granted by, I'd like to hear the definitive information from the sound consultant before we make these decisions. And I would like to re-emphasize that most of these consultants are used to working with three basic areas: commercial, retail, and residential. That is not this city. We have got to hire someone who understands this city is different and that people and uses are cheek by jowl. I'm reminded of some of the problems we had at Bay Street at one point in time. Through the Christmas season, you know, we have a lot of residents in Bay Street. It's a perfect example of a mixed use, and that was a very difficult problem to solve. We've got to get the tools, and we have got to get the information for the consultant. So I would propose we would go ahead and tell Michael to hire a consultant with an emphasis on mixed use, and then defer the rest of these questions until we get more substantive information.
Ruth?
I have a question about whether this will go out to RFP or how you'll procure this consultant.
Sure, and we've started to get a sense of who where we could find the consultants, and we started with looking at the body of consultants that help us prepare environmental documents for CEQA and what have you. We would do a RFP. We'd want to understand qualifications of the consultant who would be able to assist us on this, and so we'd have my sense is that we would do an RFP for that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm a little concerned about finding someone who has experience with our particular mix and how we're put together. But that being said, I do think for item number 4, I think we do need to go ahead and hire somebody and who just doesn't give boilerplate kinds of responses, but can really get into the specifics of what make Emeryville tick. I think for item number 2, I favor a set limit versus graduated limits. And for number 3, I want to find out more about what non-construction activities could be. I know the noise waiver instances have come to us have all been construction related, so I'd like to get a little more idea about what kinds of things that could entail before I weigh in on that.
I just want to echo what Ruth said. I'm interested in set limits, and for me, I need a little bit more information and time to consider about the waivers, but certainly want to go forward with the sound consultant, you know, with the same caveat that Ruth and Nora talked about in terms of mixed use.
I live at the Emeryville Artists Co-op, which really is mixed use very intimately, where we have working and living all in the same place. And we have our own house rules about this. And I know that what the city of Berkeley does would not wash in our community. The city of Berkeley would allow me to break out my table saw and make a quick rip in the middle of the night. And my neighbors would not appreciate that. However, what we do have something that
Just for a minute.
we do have something that in crafting our legislation where we require mediation between adjoining neighbors where there's a sound issue, and our internal building department looks at the wall construction between neighbors, and just, if they're deficient, the deficient side has to bring it up to our standard. You know, in theory, that we rely on neighbors to meet some kind of mediation and mitigation that has some objective standard. I don't mind the graduated limits because I think part of our city has an entertainment industry that I don't think we want to discourage. We want to have times where noise will be rising to a joyous crescendo and then diminishing down to a nocturnal somnolence that everyone can go to sleep in. And so I think a graduated limit might suit our city. I have this idea that we're going to have some future festival that is going to involve non-construction noise that is just going to be notable. So I think we should consider waivers for some future joyous occasion that would just be magnificent. And you know, I think we have to allow for that. And I think the right sound consultant will be important for us.
So we'll look to you for an urban Burning Man festival in Emeryville.
Well, we're going to have a momentous election this year. People will either be cheering or sobbing in the streets of Emeryville. So I don't know if we're going to get the noise ordinance completed by then, but probably not. I'd like to echo Councilmember Davis's the things that she noted, that, you know, we should get a sound consultant in here, you know, because, Michael, you presented us with a lot of data and a lot of ways to skin a cat, but what we're lacking is that context and how those decibel levels were developed, and we live in a unique city. We're only 1.2 square miles on land. I think we can get a sound consultant to actually come here and check it out, and you know, develop a context of our zoning, of our weather patterns, of our land formations, of our architecture, our neighborhoods, and really see how they abut. It's all very unique, and I think that without that information, I'm not comfortable making decisions on any of the other questions. So I would like to move forward with hiring a sound consultant, and I just wanted to make sure that the public knows that we, you know, this is the beginning of the process. We will, you know, be looking for a sound consultant. We will at some point have a draft ordinance, and there will be ample time to come back to these comments that folks are making and make adjustments along the way. And it's very important to me that we notify all of the businesses in Emeryville that could potentially be affected by changes to our noise ordinance. Do you feel you have the direction you need?
I do, thank you.
All right. With that, we can adjourn the study session, and we'll take a brief recess.
Yeah, we're there right now.
We are ready.
Right now we're not. No, yeah.
Do we have a city attorney? It is, I'm sorry, we're running a little bit late, but not that late. It's 7:31 p.m., and I'm calling to order the blue agenda, which is the City of Emeryville as successor agency to the Emeryville Redevelopment Agency. And please note, we are all still here. At this point, I will entertain public comments in the subject matter jurisdiction of the successor agency. So we're going to get to the regular meeting in just a moment, but if anyone has any public comments in the purview of the successor agency, you can come forward at this time. Seeing none, there are no special orders of the day. Do I have a motion?
Move the consent calendar.
Second. I have a motion by Councilmember Davis, a second by Councilmember Asher. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Objections? Abstentions? Motion carries. There are no action items. This meeting is adjourned. Now, we are moving on to the green agenda. This is the regular city council meeting for the city of Emeryville. It's 7:32 p.m. We've already said the Pledge of Allegiance. We are all still here, and we have several special orders of the day, beginning with the introduction of our new finance director, Susan Sheh. Did I say it correctly? Welcome, Susan, and would our city manager like to introduce her?
Well, this will be very brief, and I'll ask Susan to talk a little bit about her background. But she's going to be helping to give, leading in the presentation of a very significant presentation this evening, which is our city budget. So I think that we're going to very much appreciate Susan's skills and background, but essentially she comes to us with many years of professional experience in public finance and several certifications. She is a CPA, and also comes to us most recently from ABAG. So we all are familiar with that organization. Susan, is there anything you'd like to add?
I just want to say that I worked for Albany for many years before I joined ABAG, and I worked for a large national CPA firm, Grant Thornton, before I joined Albany. And I want to say that I'm really happy to be here. It's a great organization. It's a well-run city. I'm very fortunate to have the opportunity to work for the city. I look forward to working with everyone and serving our community. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Susan, and welcome aboard. I have another welcome to give, the introduction of the Economic Development and Housing Manager. I'll turn this over to Charlie Bryant, our Planning Director.
Thank you. I am greatly pleased to be able to introduce to you Chadrick Smalley, who is our new Economic Development and Housing Manager. Chad has been with the City of Richmond for the past 8 years, working on a variety of economic development, housing, and transportation projects, including transit-oriented development, mixed housing, mixed income housing, and grant writing. Since redevelopment was abolished in 2012, Chad was sort of the last man standing in Richmond, so he got the job of being the primary staff person in charge of the wind down of redevelopment there, so he's very familiar with the kinds of issues that we have to deal with. Prior to Richmond, I should say that most recently he served as their capital projects manager in charge of the City of Richmond's capital improvement program. Prior to Richmond, Chad worked as a planner with an economic development focus in the city of South San Francisco, in Solano County, and in Mount Pleasant, Michigan. Chad has an undergraduate degree in entrepreneurship and economics from Central Michigan University and a Master of Public Administration from San Francisco State. He and his family live in Richmond. Chad will be overseeing many of the council's priority assignments, including minimum wage, fair work week, tenant protections, affordable housing, small business assistance, broadband, and public art, to name a few. His first day with the city was yesterday. This is his second day on the job, and so far he says he still wants to stay. Welcome, Chad, and would you like to say a few words to the council?
Absolutely, Madam Mayor and the City Council. Thank you, Charlie, for that introduction. Appreciate it. It's hard to overstate how excited I am to be here. I am ecstatic to work on this agenda that you've all laid out. I'm ecstatic to work in a place that has a stated commitment to supporting small business. And coincidentally, on a related note, this happens to be National Small Business Week, and May has been designated by the governor as Small Business Month. So I encourage everyone here and everyone watching to consider in making your purchases here in Emeryville at our small businesses and independent businesses. So I'm happy to be here and happy to join a team and ready to get at it. So thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Welcome here.
And this is a rare and momentous day where we are swearing in 3 officers to our force. So I'll turn it over to Chief Tejada for the formalities, but a welcome to all of the family members and folks who've come to support these officers and see them sworn in.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members and audience. This is one of the fun things that I get to do, and that is to swear in new officers. And tonight I have the pleasure of swearing in our 3 newest hires. I will say that it takes us a long time to get to this mark because it's rather difficult to attract people to this profession because of the risks. And so it takes a special character and person to make it as far as they have. They've been through the academy. They've been through which is 6 months. They've been through our in-house training program, which is another, actually some are still in it. Officer Murch is still in it, but our in-house training program is 4 months. So they invest an awful lot of time in order to get to where they are tonight. And I'm going to introduce them. I have some bios to share with you. First, I'm going to introduce Officer Ariel Murch. Want to come up? Officer Murch is 25 years old, and she grew up in Castro Valley. She was fortunate enough to have a great family friend who was a good mentor and inspired her to become a police officer. She received an AA degree from Chabot College in sociology. She enjoys spending her time off with friends and family and traveling. She was previously a dispatcher for Hayward Police Department, and that was her stepping stone into law enforcement. And subsequently, she came to Emeryville as a police officer. She graduated from the 154th Academy in Alameda County Sheriff's Regional Training Center. She says she's excited and honored to be part of this department and to serve the Emeryville community. Pinning her badge tonight is her mom, Mrs. Wright, and we'll call you up in a moment, Mrs. Wright. Next, it's my pleasure to introduce Officer Chris Berrien. Come on up. Officer Berrien was born in Spain, and he grew up in the town of Winton, California. His mother and father are both U.S. Air Force veterans. Chris excelled at sports at a very young age, including soccer, baseball, football, and track and field. He attended the California State University at Fresno, where he majored in criminology and completed in track and field. Chris continued to compete in track and field professionally after college, where he developed into a world-class sprinter. In 2014, Chris attended the Fresno City Police Academy and graduated with 2 scholarship awards and an award for the cadet with the top physical fitness. He was originally recruited by Pismo Beach, but knowing that there was another department out there that would bring him closer to his family and Emeryville was hiring, he applied to Emeryville and is delighted to be working here, serving this community. Chris is engaged and in his spare time enjoys all types of sports and spending time with his daughter over here. And pinning his badge tonight is his fiancée, Summer. Hi, I just said hi. Next, I would like to introduce Officer Austin Kincaid. Officer Kincaid was raised in Sacramento before moving to the Sierra Nevada foothills. He comes from a family of emergency responders. His father was a member of the San Francisco Fire Department, and his mother, who recently passed away, was a pediatrics nurse. Austin has an older brother who is a Washington State trooper and a younger brother who is still in school. Austin trained in an occupational program for firefighting and emergency medical services. At the young age of 17, he enlisted in the U.S. Marine Corps Reserve and left for basic training shortly after turning 18. When Austin returned home, he attended the Sacramento County Sheriff's Academy and graduated at the age of 20. Most people graduate at 21. So he's a bit of an overachiever, I think. Austin is extremely motivated to follow the family legacy of helping others in public service. Austin spends his free time hiking, four-wheeling, and being outdoors. He looks forward to fulfilling his oath, serving and protecting the citizens of the city of Emeryville. Tonight, Austin is being pinned by his father, Scott Kincaid, a 36-year veteran paramedic with the city of San Francisco. And with that, we will do the swearing in. You can smile. Okay, so I will have you raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, say your name. Do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Do solemnly swear that I will defend the Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance.
To the Constitution of the United States.
To the Constitution of the United States.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
And the Constitution of the State of California.
That I take this obligation freely.
That I take this obligation freely.
And without any mental reservation.
And without any mental reservation.
Or purpose of evasion.
Or purpose of evasion.
And that I will well and faithfully.
And that I will well and faithfully.
Discharge the duties.
Discharge the duties.
Upon which I am about to enter.
Upon which I am about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Kincaid, come on up. So, we'll just have you, so the flags are in the background? Are we going to take a picture?
That's photobombing.
Cell phone. The flags are in the background. That means we're in the background.
The ironic thing is that Austin's badge number is 29, and I work at Station 29 in San Francisco.
Hey. Nice. 34. Okay. Summer. So just stand so I was in the background.
too late. Oh, she's going to do another one.
Congratulations. And Mrs. Wright? Right here.
I'm so scared.
Oh.
How cute.
That's cute.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. All right, moving on to item 3.6, we have Older Americans Month. It's a proclamation that I believe will be read by Pedro Jimenez. I don't have a copy of it.
You would like a copy?
I'm happy to read it.
Sorry.
All right, this is a proclamation. Actually, I'll give everyone a moment to clear.
Yeah.
All right. It's a proclamation proclaiming the month of May 2016 as Older Americans Month. Whereas the city of Emeryville includes a community of older Americans who deserve recognition for their contributions to our nation, and whereas the city of Emeryville recognizes that older adults are trailblazers, advocating for themselves, their peers, their communities, paving the way for future generations, and whereas the city of Emeryville is committed to raising awareness about issues facing older Americans and helping all individuals to thrive in the communities of their choice for as long as possible, and whereas we appreciate the value of inclusion and support in helping older adults successfully contribute to and benefit from their communities, and whereas our community can provide opportunities to enrich the lives of individuals of all ages by promoting and engaging in activity, wellness, and social involvement, emphasizing home and community-based services that support independent living, ensuring community members can benefit from the contributions and experience from older adults. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Diane Martinez, on behalf of the City of Emeryville, California, do hereby proclaim May 2016 to be Older Americans Month. I urge every resident to take time this month to acknowledge the older adults and people who serve them as powerful and vital individuals who greatly contribute to our community, proclaimed this third day of May at 2016 at a regular City Council meeting by the Mayor of Emeryville. And then I have another proclamation, item 3.7. This is a proclamation recognizing May 13th to May 21st, 2016 as the 20th annual East Bay Affordable Housing Week, investing in homes and hope. Whereas quality affordable housing is vital to healthy, safe, vibrant, and diverse communities, and whereas affordable homes are a solution to homelessness and provide support to seniors, families, youth, veterans, and people with disabilities, and whereas rising housing costs have led longtime residents to be displaced, live in overcrowded and substandard homes, or become homeless, threatening our region's diversity and economic prosperity, and whereas creating new, permanently affordable homes and preserving and improving existing housing helps our residents maintain community roots and encourages racial and economic diversity for generations, and whereas affordable homes close to public transit and jobs reduce greenhouse gas emissions and provide low-income families with better access to opportunities and amenities, and whereas empowering and engaging local resident leaders helps to shape better housing, tenant protections, and development policies, And whereas nonprofit organizations, local jurisdictions, community organizations, and many others continue to build inclusive communities by providing shelter, homes, and support for low-income people and those with special needs. And whereas local jurisdictions like the City of Emeryville can play an important role by supporting investments in affordable housing, including a countywide housing bond. And whereas East Bay Housing Organizations has organized Affordable Housing Week for 20 years and will feature 17 events acknowledging the need for benefits of affordable housing. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that I, Diane Martinez, Mayor of the City of Emeryville, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim May 13th to May 21st, 2016, as the 20th Annual Affordable Housing Week in the City of Emeryville. And be it further proclaimed that the City of Emeryville will work to support affordable housing at the local, regional, and state level, and will encourage residents of Emeryville to participate in Affordable Housing Week activities. And be it further proclaimed that this summer the City of Emeryville will review and consider supporting an Alameda County housing bond as part of a broader effort to build and preserve affordable homes. Proclaimed this 3rd day of May, 2016, by the Mayor of the City of Emeryville. Catherine.
Hi, Catherine Frippo, Housing Coordinator. We have tonight to present this proclamation. We were presenting this proclamation to Dan Zoslack, from the Executive Director of Resources for Community Development. He's an EBHO board member. He actually, Resources for Community Development is the developer of 3 of our affordable housing projects, Triangle Court, Bay Bridge, and Ambassador. And with him is Anita Schools, who is a resident of one of our affordable housing projects at the Ambassador, and they will accept the proclamation.
Great. Thank you. Would you like to say anything while you're here? You came all this way.
I'd love to. So I just want to say a couple words. Thanks very much. It's good to be here. We've been working in Emeryville for almost 20 years, I think over 20 years now, and it's great to be back and see the great things you guys are doing. A couple of quick things. Anita is going to come up. She's a resident of the Ambassador. I just wanted to present a couple things to you, or maybe pass out. One is the calendar of Affordable Housing Week. There's a number of events throughout the East Bay. They're really good in terms of visiting projects that are completed, an opportunity to kind of learn about affordable housing. And then there's a very wonderful celebration next Friday in Oakland. That's kind of a community celebration on around Affordable Housing Week, and we want to invite everybody, all of you, to come. So thanks so much for the proclamation. It's very meaningful. Thanks for what you do for affordable housing, and let's get to work and do even more. Thanks so much. And I'm going to just, I don't know if I should, I'll send it to the clerk. Thanks. And I'm also going to take a picture of Anita as she talks. So.
Hi. Good afternoon. My name is Anita Schools. I am here as a representative of the East Bay Housing Organizer Resident and Community Organized Program. EBHO is 5 million members strong, organized, working to preserve and create affordable housing through the advocacy, education, and consistent building. On behalf of EBHO, I would like to thank the City Council of Emeryville for recognizing the Affordable Housing Week and for their community to expect and preserve affordable housing in Emeryville. This year, Affordable Housing Week will feature the 17th evening tour grand opening community convention in 8 cities and highlight this year through events in home and hope. We choose this thing to uncover the city need for public interest in affordable housing throughout the Bay Area and to foster hope by allowing people to stay in their community, build health, future, and preserve device in many years to come. I am a resident of of Emeryville. I live at the Ambassador, which is affordable housing building sponsored by Resource Community Development. I am joining ECHO to help other people to resource and learn about affordable housing opportunity and be voice for people with disability who cannot advocate for on behalf of themselves. EBHO also encouraged the city of Emeryville to support state and country level affordable to ensure affordable housing find such as the Alameda Housing Bond that the Board of Supervisors are currently consider address the leadership in Sacramento introduced the whole legal for affordable home, including AB 2502, known as the Palm Fix Bill, which clarified that the local judges may require integrated affordable unit as a minimum unit rented development. We encourage you to pass a resource in support of those bulletin and bill and address to the local leadership on those currently issued. We invite the council member and resident of the Emeryville to all of our Affordable Housing Week evening and to the Affordable Housing Week kickoff celebration on Friday, May 13th in Oakland. We were proud to discuss this resource at EBCHO kickoff attended by 3 supported of affordable housing. Pass the post and invitation to elect officer or to clerk if you are privileged. After guidebook are available, please include those as well. On behalf of EBHO member and ROCP, thank you very much for this honor, and we hope to see you at that evening.
Thank you very much.
Dan, you thanked us for all that we do, but really back at you in spades, because you hang in through thick and thin, through financing woes and everything to try to cobble financing together for projects, and you've been at it a long time, and you've been very successful, and have done quite a bit yourself. So we really can't thank you enough for all that you've done over a long period of time.
Thank you. All right, at this time, I will entertain public comments for items that are not on the agenda or for items that are on the under 6 consent items. So if there are any public comments for items not on the agenda or items on the consent items, I'll take those at this time.
Rob Arias, I'm a 13-year Emeryville resident. I also write a news site that covers Emeryville called The Evil Eye. I use this to advocate for things that within our city, like skate parks, small businesses, neighbors being threatened by displacement. I've tried to give a voice to those in the city without a voice. I've been on committees. I've organized State of the City events, debates, national ad events. I did a raffle for kids at the skate park opening. I've helped raise money for nonprofits like ECAP. I even got Draymond Green to come here to City Hall. Whenever staff asks me to help promote in a city event, I've stepped in to do it. I love this city. Regardless of if you agree with me, everything that I write, I hope you'll agree that I've tried my hardest to help instill pride and civic engagement in our town. Now I'm asking for your help. The area under the 40th Street Bridge is the most blighted area of our town, and it's affecting the quality of life in our neighborhood. I regularly walk my dog by there, buy buckets of human waste, needles, other drug paraphernalia, condoms. I've seen it all. But I don't just complain. I build coalitions. I propose solutions. A solution that was universally well received by staff, every single one of my neighbors, and a majority of you. I'm asking that you turn the most blighted, desperate area of our town into a community resource. Fairly soon, you'll be asked to help prioritize the capital improvement project list. One of these is the Halleck Beach Dog Park. I'm asking for more than your support on this, though. I'm asking that you make this a priority. I'm asking that you demonstrate that residents can still make a difference in their community. I'm gonna be a father in 6 weeks. In 6 weeks, I'm gonna be pushing a stroller through there, in an area on my way back to Target to pick up diapers. I'm asking the city council make this area safe for my family and for my neighbors. Please.
Good evening, council members. John Bowders. I first came to my first city council meeting a number of years ago for a day I come back to every year, which is when you recognize Affordable Housing Week. And I'm very happy to be back here again today to thank you and show appreciation for your recognition of that. As somebody who's worked on housing and homelessness issues for over a decade and seen what homelessness does to people, I wish Anita had had the chance to stay. I got to thank her before she walked out. But affordable housing is the crisis of today in our community. There's a lot of things that we can talk to and point to that need our attention, but you can't ask people to deal with mental health. You can't ask people to deal with addiction. You can't ask people to prioritize their finances and resources if they don't know where they're going to sleep at night. And so I just want to say, as a concerned citizen on this issue, as a planning commissioner, as someone who has really carried that torch for a long time, I'm happy that I'm not alone, but I'm very grateful that we have a city council that has prioritized this issue and that the steps you've taken in the last few years have really set the table for us to be an exemplary leader in the East Bay on this issue. And so it's poignant that I can follow my neighbor Rob up here, because I think the concerns he's raised really paint the spectrum of that issue. We do need to make a concerted effort to improve the affordable housing access we have in this community in the greater Bay Area. I do hope that the bond measure that Alameda County is considering comes to the ballot this year. I hope that when you get that opportunity, you will pass a resolution unanimously endorsing it. And thank you for all your work on that.
Mr. Carpio.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is André Carpio. I live on 1264 Ocean Avenue, and my house has been red tagged since last July. And the reason was imminent collapse. So maybe imminent collapse should be redefined, especially imminent. The Statue of Liberty has been branded imminent collapse ever since it was built, but I don't have to recall the story here. I want to point out here that this has given me an excellent opportunity to raise the issue of fairness, and I'm again coming with the story of Stephen Wesley. And you passed the motion saying that is passed and that is not anymore in our spectrum, but I maintain that at that time, that, and still now, Steve Wesley was mistreated, was wrongfully terminated because he didn't have a fair hearing, and a fair hearing that is consistent with the state and federal status. And this is very important to me. You like to escape and not look into it, in which you push forward the sin is committed, and this is not the way it works. A fair hearing is something that has to be developed between the plaintiff and the defendant, and here I stand in front of you again and again and again, trying to bring justice to Steve Wesley. Steve Wesley was not a chattel. He was a superintendent for a year, and there was no complaint about his performance, his job performance. People just dig up in the dirt to get him out of Emeryville. Thank you. I appreciate your attention this matter. Bye.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to make a public comment at this time? Seeing none, is there a city manager's report?
Madam Mayor, with your indulgence, I'd like to ask if I could please defer my city manager report until a little bit later in the evening so that we can recognize an individual who was just today involved in a rather remarkable rescue. So when the individual arrives, I will let you know and ask you to reschedule that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to consent items.
Consent.
I would actually like to pull one thing. Does anyone else need to pull any other items?
What are you pulling?
I'd like to pull item 6.6.
Move the remainder of the consent calendar.
So we have a motion to move 6.1 to 6.5. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Noes, abstentions, motion carries. So item 6.6 is a second reading of the ordinance of the City of Emeryville, amending Chapter 28 of Title 5 of the Emeryville Municipal Code. We received public comment via email from Berkeley Patients Group, and our city attorney's office very deftly addressed the concerns raised by Berkeley Patients Group in a red line that we've got in front of us. So, Mr. Gina, would you kindly give us a summary of the adjustments that were made and how these conclusions were arrived at between yourself, and I know this is a joint effort between yourself and the police department.
Right, and so the chief and I will be tag teaming on responding to your questions. Today, the city had received a comment from Berkeley Patients Group regarding the ordinance, the delivery ordinance, and they asked for 4 different amendments to the ordinance. One, that the application materials be deemed confidential material for purposes of disclosure under the Public Records Act. 2, that regarding background checks, the Berkeley Patients Group notes that they already undergo background checks that are conducted by the city of Berkeley, and they had put forward that having a second round of background checks to do business in Emeryville is repetitive and may increase their costs, and so they are asking that there be reciprocity between the cities of Berkeley and the Berkeley and Emeryville, such that folks that would be applying for a permit in Emeryville, if they have already undergone a background check in Berkeley, that be considered a compliance for the Emeryville ordinance. The third area where they were asking for an amendment is in the area regarding the staff consideration of a permit issuance or a renewal. As to the DMV history, they are asking that the city impose a limit on the amount of time that the police chief can look back in the applicant's history in determining whether or not a permit should issue. And likewise, in terms of felony convictions, they're asking that there be a limit imposed on the types of felonies that could be considered and whether or not the chief would be issuing a permit for the delivery or for the renewal of that permit. So those were the 4 asks. We had prepared prepared responses where we could recommend some of the asks and had prepared the red line accordingly. I can summarize our response if you'd like, or I could stop right there.
I think a summary would be in order.
Okay, sure. Regarding the request that the application materials be deemed confidential, staff can make that recommendation, and so our red line that we provided for you includes that amendment. Regarding background checks and reciprocity, staff cannot make that recommendation. Emeryville has a interest in understanding who would be doing delivery services in Emeryville, and what City of Berkeley does background checks for and what they're screening for may or may not necessarily comply or comport with what are what is important for folks that are doing business for our type of ordinance here.
Could you tell us what the cost is to the applicant for a background check?
I don't have that information.
Roughly?
I don't know what that is at the moment.
Andrea?
This is Andrea Visveshwara. She's the Assistant City Attorney.
Sorry, the proposed ordinance, section... see here, section 5-28.05, B8 talks about fees, and applicable fees will be set forth in the city's master fee schedule adopted by resolution, and they'll have to pay the amount as prescribed by the DOJ for the processing of the applicant's fingerprints. So right now we don't have a fee set, and I don't know what the cost would be for the DOJ fingerprints, but I don't think it's that much.
I'm just curious if it's something that a small business person would be able, that would give them trouble.
Right, and to answer your question, so we have not, Andrew's point being that we have not set our own fee schedule for what our background check would be. I don't have that information, unfortunately, about what the city's, what City of Berkeley's background check fee is. We can look that up. But
you can move forward. Sorry, that was just a question I had.
So again, reciprocity and the idea of reciprocity, staff is not recommending that amendment to the ordinance. Regarding the look back for DMV history, staff can get behind that recommendation and is recommending that staff's ability to look back in a applicant's DMV history go back 5 years from the date of the submission of the application. Regarding felony convictions and the ability to look back there, staff is recommending that there be a look back period of 5 years for serious or violent felonies, 10 years for crimes against a person as to both misdemeanors or felonies, and 10 years for being the restrained person in a restraining order. And so those amendments are reflected in the red line that we sent you.
Okay.
And that's the summary.
Mayor Martinez, I have a question. If the council should go ahead with these amendments, would that require this to be start all over again?
That's right. So you adopted a first reading at your last meeting. Any amendments that we do would require a new first reading tonight with those amendments incorporated, and then we would have a second reading again at your next meeting.
Do you and the police chief feel strongly that these amendments that you have recommended will strengthen the document, will make it more efficient? Chief, could we hear from you?
It's kind of the opposite.
I think it will speak to everybody's concerns about this ordinance in a way that protects the city from any liability, as well as protects those who request medical marijuana from anybody who might be considering victimizing them. So I think it speaks to everybody's concerns about the original document, the original ordinance.
The other question I have is, one of the reasons we kind of push this on the fast track was because we have people here in Emeryville who need the deliveries of marijuana, and this will set us back, what, another 2 months?
No, not that long. I mean, if you, it will essentially set you back one meeting. So
Well, wait a minute, this would be a first reading.
this would be a first reading tonight. A second reading would occur at your next meeting on
the 17th.
On May 17th, and then the effective date of the ordinance would be 30 days after that, which would be June 17th.
These amendments make some sense to me, and I definitely don't want to go by Berkeley's criteria of vetting people, but these other recommendations you made I find to be very sensible and reasonable and helpful to, as you say, Diane, the small business people, to give them a leg up to get involved in this whole process. So I would move a first reading of this ordinance with the changes suggested by the police chief and the city attorney.
Mayor?
That's a motion.
I have a comment. I agree with numbers 1 and 2, not recommending reciprocity. The DMV history, 5 years, okay. The felony convictions, 5 years from application for serious or violent felonies, I'm okay with that change. I think that 10 years for any crime against a person for misdemeanors and felonies is too extreme, and 10 years for being the restrained person of on a restraining order is also too extreme. When people have been convicted of a crime and they've done their time, I don't know why we have to continue to punish them by possibly keeping them out of employment and the economy. And I think 10 years is way too long to dig into someone's background. I don't know what our regulations are around taxi drivers, but people can get into cars with people in our city, and I'm not sure that we regulate it to this degree, and I know that's certainly not happening with Uber and Lyft. So I see those as really a bridge too far. I would be able to support 5 years for serious or violent felons, and the rest of the staff recommendations. And that would be my substitute. Amendment? That would be my substitute motion.
Okay. Do I have a second on the substitute? Or
could we hear from the police chief?
Sure.
And, you know, I agree with you that people shouldn't be paying for a crime beyond time served, except in certain situations. And there are several examples of professions where people are convicted, serve time, and then are no longer allowed to practice with a license in their chosen profession, such as teachers, doctors, police officers. There are many professions where even though you have already served your time, your crime prohibits you from performing certain services where you come in contact with people who are maybe vulnerable, such as young children, people who are disabled, people who are ill, who cannot generally fend for themselves. And so that's why something like a restraining order is very important, because restraining orders are in place to protect people. And if that was my reason I added that, because I have experience in cases where restraining orders are issued, and I think we have an obligation to protect this particular segment of our population who are vulnerable by virtue of maybe their illness or whatever the disability is. So somebody with a restraining order or somebody with a history of violence against persons is another example of where people cannot continue to work in certain professions. We're not denying them employment across the board. It's just in this particular instance where they have an opportunity to come in contact with somebody who is a member of what I would consider a vulnerable population. And that's my input and my reason for that.
Okay, so we have a substitute motion. Is there a second on the substitute motion?
Call the question on the first motion.
I will get to public comment, so let's open it up right now. Public comment, please. Does anyone want to speak on this issue?
Was there a second on the original?
No. Not yet. But we can.
It has been my experience that continuing punishing people doesn't really serve any purpose, and I agree with Chief Diana that the restraining order is a tool to protect people, but there is other area in a felony status that should not be kept for years and years and years. What's passed and you pay for, then it's over, you know. I mean, to really dig and behave like a grave digger is real bad policy. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on this item? Okay, back to discussion.
So there's a substitute motion, and we have to vote on that first, right?
It wasn't a
But if there's no second,
But I feel like there was second.
yeah, so then we have to move back to the first motion.
So I call the question on the first motion.
That's right. So the substitute motion failed for a lack of a second, so we now consider the original motion by Councilmember Davis. We have a motion on the floor. We still need a second on that.
Is there a second? I'll second it. Is there further discussion? Yeah.
Can we, what happens if we leave it without the red line?
If I may,
Yes,
if
please.
we leave it without the red line, then we have the original ordinance that you had adopted a first reading of at the last meeting. You would need to take a vote on the ordinance as
a second
currently
reading.
written as a second reading.
But then it doesn't take care of the privacy concerns,
It does not.
the background checks.
It does not. Certainly, the council has the opportunity at some later date to further amend the ordinance again if it wishes to. But to get to the question, you can adopt the second reading of the ordinance tonight as written. It would take effect 30 days from tonight.
30 days from the second, the first reading, if we adopt the
from
first
the-
reading. Discussion?
Tonight is the second reading.
Scott?
I think I'm going to defer to Chief Tejada's judgment about this because, you know, this is, I don't know. I mean, I feel conflicted. Of course, I want to make sure. I've hired people with records in my past and have had great success hiring people, but it's a different job that I hired for. The job I hired for was I was there all the time, and it worked out great, but this job is maybe more sensitive. It's one-on-one, dark, vulnerable population, so I'm inclined to support the first motion.
Ruth?
No comment.
I'll just say that we will have opportunities to address this in the future, but this is an ordinance that I would like to get through a first and a second reading and get to a place where folks will legally be able to get permitted to make deliveries in Emeryville, because at the moment we don't have that structure existing. I'd like to get it in place. If we would like to address this again at a later time, I think that's fine. We definitely, as a city, are going to have an opportunity to do that when we look at the overall package of what our medical marijuana ordinances are going to look like in the near future. So with that, would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Asher?
Listening to the mayor, I hope that we come back to clean up this legislation. It's a bridge too far. It's an example of over-policing, but in the effort to get medical marijuana delivery done quickly, and with the hope that we'll revisit some of these terms, because people who have served time in prison are also a vulnerable population. I hope that we revisit, but for now, yes.
Councilmember Atkin?
So I need clarification. Are we voting on the red line version tonight?
Yes, you
or
are.
Or the original? So is this the first reading or the second reading?
This is the first reading. So this is the first reading of the ordinance with the staff recommendation.
Got it. Okay. I vote aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Donahue?
Aye.
Mayor Martinez?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, now we are on to public hearings. So item 7.1, resolution of the City Council of the City of Emeryville approving amendments to the conditions of approval and the approved site plan of conditional use permit for Escuela Bilingüe Internacional at 4550 San Pablo Avenue to delete all references to the pedestrian path connecting 45th Street and 47th along the eastern property line. And presenting, we have Senior Planner Maru Desai.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council members. I'm Miru Desai, Senior Planner. This is first of the two items on your public hearing agenda today, which are connected. I'll be presenting this one, and I'll be followed by Michael Gina, who will be talking about the second one. So this is regarding the EBI school and amending the conditions of approval. As you very well know, the school is on San Pablo Avenue. A use permit was approved by the council back in 2011, and as part of the use permit conditions, one condition included the design and construction of a mid-block pedestrian path along the eastern property line connecting 45th and 47th Street. On May of 2012, the Planning Commission considered the design of this path and approved that design at their September meeting. And this decision of the Planning Commission was appealed by the Tans, who are the adjacent property owner along the eastern property line. And the council considered the appeal in December of 2012 and granted it in part and denied it in part. Specifically, the council upheld the Planning Commission's decision to approve the path, and as part of this consideration, the council gave staff direction to prepare a resolution to initiate a general plan amendment to delete this path from the general plan as well as the bicycle and pedestrian plan. The Planning Commission at the February 2013 meeting recommended to the council to delete this path from the general plan and the bicycle and pedestrian plan. And at the April of that year, the council voted to approve the resolution to delete the path from the general plan and the bicycle plan. In addition, at this meeting, the council gave staff direction to enter into negotiations with EBI to discuss the fair value to be paid in lieu of the construction of the pedestrian path. So since then, staff has been in discussions with EBI, and on March of this year, the council approved the terms of the compensation at a closed session, and the settlement agreement has now been executed. So as the city has reached an agreement, the EBI's use permit needs to be amended in a couple of ways. One is by deleting all the references to the pedestrian path in the conditions of approval, as well as removing the path from the approved landscape plan, which shows, the path. So these are some of the conditions which will be changed. The first one includes the sheet that will show the landscape plan without the path and deletes the sheet that shows the path. The second one is regarding the pedestrian easement and the irrevocable offer to dedicate. This will be deleted, and also this will be handled in the next item of the council. And there are other conditions which kind of pertain to design of the path, which are no longer applicable at this point. And so is this. This is regarding the fence that was to go along the path. This is the previously approved site landscape plan, which shows the path along the eastern property line. And this is the revised site plan that will replace the earlier plan, which does not show any path along the eastern property line. So that concludes my presentation, and after receiving any public testimony, we recommend that the council approve the resolution that contains the amended conditions of approval as well as the revised landscape plan. So if there are any questions, I would be happy to answer your question.
Clarifying questions? No? I'll open it up for public comment.
And Mayor, as a point of order, you're opening up the public hearing.
Opening the public hearing. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Eric Gascoigne, a 20-year resident.
Lift the microphone,
microphone, please.
You're
You're being
20-year
broadcast.
resident of Emeryville. at 1093 45th Street. I'm here to speak against both the agenda items for modifying EBI's conditional use permit to delete the references to the pedestrian path and terminating, and also the next item, which is terminating the irrevocable offer of dedication for the pedestrian pathway. This entire development hasn't been right, and it hasn't been right from the beginning. First of all, this private school for young children has been allowed to be installed in a 1950s concrete retrofitted building that would never have been legal to occupy for public use. Then the children's playground and exercise area was installed right on San Pablo Avenue. Also being located on a heavily traveled state highway, the playground is also located within 500 feet of one of the single most gross polluting diesel emitting properties in Emeryville, which is AC Transit, with their nearly 500 buses they have coming in and out daily. For this student, for this 400 student kindergarten to 8th grade private school, the city did not require much from them to be located here. There was no traffic impact report, no sound study, or mitigation. In my eyes, there was only one requirement, and that was to provide, build, and maintain a pedestrian pathway through their property. This project was allowed to be phased in over the last 5 years, something that I have never seen allowed in Emeryville before. During this time, the city adopted a new general plan and even went as far as changing the school zoning, removing over 1 acre of residentially zoned land and rezoning it to a much more lucrative mixed use. And by the way, the neighboring property, Hydraulic Controls, did not get this benefit of rezoning for their residential portion of their land to mixed use, which doesn't make any sense to me. Now, due to this strange zoning situation, my residential zoned property has been degraded by having mixed use zoning on 3 sides of me where it was once residential. By the city rezoning EBI's entire property to mixed use, MUR, and allowing the entire development to be phased in, the city has legally made it impossible to change or amend EBI's use permit at this time without rezoning the majority of the property back to residential. Any change or modification in their CUP, the city will have to be in keeping with the general plan and in line with the Emeryville's planning regulations. Due to the rezoning of this property, there's an additional finding that has to be made in accordance to Emeryville's planning regulations. Under 9.3.303 Section C findings, to grant a conditional use permit for a single use on a site of at least 1 acre, but less than 5 acres in the mixed-use zones, pursuant to subsection B2B of this section, of the following finding must be made in addition to the findings required by Article 5 of Chapter 7. And that is that the applicant has convincingly demonstrated that it is infeasible to develop a project with mix of use groups on this site. Whether or not EBI wants to use this property for one use or the designated multi-use it is zoned for now, the finding will have to be made and demonstrated prior to any amendments or changes to their conditional use permit. Also, before EBI's CUP is amended, and before the city takes any money from this school, it will be in the public's interest to have a set plan in place for the city to spend this money on a public benefit to enhance pedestrian connectivity in the Triangle neighborhood. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak at this time? Okay. Is there any discussion?
You have to close the public hearing first.
Close the public hearing. Discussion?
I'd just like to make a comment, Mayor. We've been at this for many years, and there's been a tug back and forth, many different ideas on this. but I think the council has arrived with the assistance of the staff and the owners of the property at a reasonable solution. I would move the resolution.
Second.
We have a motion by Davis, a second by Asher. No further comments. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Asher.
Aye.
Councilmember Atkin.
Aye.
Councilmember Davis.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Donahue.
Aye.
Mayor Martinez.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
That moves us to item 7.2, the resolution of the City Council of the City of Emeryville terminating the irrevocable offer of dedication and abandoning the right to accept such offer for the pedestrian path connecting 45th Street and 47th Street along the eastern property line of Escuela Bilingüe International property at 4550 San Pablo Avenue.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. Michael Gina, City Attorney, and I'm taking the second part of this item. As Ms. Desai mentioned, the city had entered into a settlement agreement with EBI. There are two conditions that the city must fulfill pursuant to that agreement. The first is to amend the conditions of approval to remove references to the pedestrian path, and that's the action that you just took. The other action that the city is called to do is to terminate the irrevocable offer of dedication for the easement of that path. Shortly after the school had been granted their conditional use permit, pursuant to the conditions in that permit, they had offered the city a irrevocable offer of dedication, which we then recorded for the easement of the path. In order to terminate that easement pursuant to the Government Code and the Streets and Highways Code, the city is required to adopt a resolution terminating that irrevocable offer of dedication. And the facts surrounding that are outlined in the staff report and the resolution. And in summary, when the City Council adopted the resolution to amend the general path and the pedestrian and bicycle path to remove a pedestrian and bicycle plan to remove the path from those two plans, the City Council had made certain findings, and those findings were that they found that the path in that location there was an issue with public safety, and that subsequent and a potential negative effect to the neighborhood. And the City Council also found that the removal of the path from those plans would enhance the neighborhood. And so those were the findings that you made, and those are the findings that can support the termination of the irrevocable offer of dedication in this case. That's the conclusion of my report. I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Any clarifying questions? Okay, I will open the public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on this? Seeing none, I will close the public hearing.
Move the resolution.
Second.
So we have a motion from Davis, a second from Asher. Is there any discussion?
I would like to change one word in this plan. I have to find it, but basically it says that this will cause, if we have the path, a public safety problem. I want to change will to could, because will is not accurate. We don't know. Could should be substituted.
Mr. Gina, can you help us locate this?
Sure,
Resolution.
In the resolution.
Sure. Give me just a moment.
Sorry, I lined it and neglected to save it.
The final resolution says that the City Council made findings that the pedestrian path immediately adjacent to the residential properties poses safety concerns because it could attract criminal activity. It
Yes,
says
but
could.
That's right, but then it goes on later to say will. Where
I don't see.
is it?
So I am seeing where Councilmember Asher has pointed out that on the resolution, the first page, the last full whereas clause provides that In adopting Resolution 1358, the council made findings that the pedestrian path immediately adjacent to residential properties poses safety concerns because it could attract criminal activity, and accordingly removal of the path from the general plan and ped and bike plan could improve the safety of the surrounding neighborhood. And I don't see any other references to a will, but if I'm missing something, I'm happy to be directed to it too.
Wasn't just me, Diane saw it.
And I did see it too, and I think it was actually in the previous resolution, so.
Okay, oh well. But the point just being that, you know, we have findings about something in the future that will cause crime. That's just too strong about pedestrian paths to have that negative declaration. That's my only point, that pedestrian paths don't inherently cause crime. They could cause crime. That's all.
People cause crime.
Yeah, but you
Not
know,
the path.
by having a finding that says they will and go forward with that in our future, somebody could cite this and say, look, you already said they will cause crime. You can't do a new path anywhere. So that's all. That's what
Okay, all right, the question's been called.
Okay,
So.
oh, wait, here.
Oh. Did you find it?
1 second here.
Mr. Guinawell, Councilmember Donahue's.
Okay, I found it.
Oh.
Okay. Here it's Section A, and it's Resolution 1358, page 2 of 3. So the second page, A, it says, the pedestrian path between 45th and 47th Street immediately adjacent to the residential property poses a safety concerns because it could attract criminal activity. Its elimination from the general plan will therefore contribute to the public health and safety and general welfare. That's what I want to change, that will to could.
So, Mayor Martinez, as a point of order, what is before the council tonight is the motion on the floor is not a motion to amend Resolution 1358.
Nope.
What you are considering is the proposed resolution, which does not have the will language in there. So
okay, I understand.
The council cannot vote on Resolution 1358 right now.
That's understood. Thank you. So we have a motion. We have a second. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Asher?
Aye.
Councilmember Atkin?
Aye.
Councilmember Davis?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Donahue?
Aye.
Mayor Martinez?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right, that will move us to action items. 8.1, an update on the Alameda County Community Choice Energy Steering Committee progress. I believe...
I'm so excited to see this moving
yes,
forward.
and I know that we've had some folks who've been waiting for some time to give this presentation. Nancy, are you going to introduce our guests?
Yes, I am. I am. I had a little mix-up about the agenda. Good evening again. I'm still Nancy Humphrey, Environmental Program Supervisor, and I'm just here briefly to introduce our guests, Tom Kelly and Bruce Jensen, who are here to give you an update on the Community Choice Energy process within Alameda County. We're calling it CCE now. We used to call it CCA, Community Choice Aggregation. So I think some of us will switch back and forth, but CCE and CCA it's the same process. I think CCE is a better name. So Mr. Kelly and Mr. Jensen, you want your presentation? Oh, that's not it.
Thank you for coming, Bruce. I know you got here early, so you got to see all the officers get pinned.
And I didn't add the word county on those slides.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Nancy.
Good evening, Mayor Martinez and council members. I'm Bruce Jensen, the Senior Planner with the Alameda County Planning Department. Thank you for the opportunity to present here tonight. We're excited about the creation of a community choice aggregation energy program in Alameda County, and we hope the city of Emeryville will consider joining us to make the program a success. We built a rigorous community process that includes representation from all the eligible cities in the county, along with stakeholders from environmental and social justice organizations, labor, regional government, and more. We also have a feasibility study underway to assess CCE viability. We expect completion of this study by next month. Our analyst on the study will be presenting his preliminary results tomorrow evening at our steering committee meeting. And from what we've seen so far, they suggest a positive outcome for an Alameda County CCE program. Multi-jurisdictional CCEs are commonly operated by joint powers agencies, or JPAs, and our work in creating a JPA is underway. A draft JPA agreement is being reviewed by city attorneys in coordination with our county council. The object is to help city attorneys become comfortable with the terms and language for eventual inclusion of their jurisdictions into the JPA. This month, we're visiting each city represented on the steering committee with a brief introduction to CCE plus an update on the work to date. This presentation is intended to cover general CCE concepts, answer your questions about the process, and help prepare your city council and your city manager to take the necessary steps to join the JPA in the fall of 2016. So with that, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Mr. Tom Kelly of the Sequoia Foundation. Mr. Kelly and his associates have been instrumental and very helpful to us in getting our process going and keeping it going. He'll provide you with some details of how community choice aggregation works.
Thank you, Mayor Martinez, members of the City Council, staff, residents. Thank you. Use that? Yeah. Great, thank you. So we've been engaged in this process now for almost a year and a half, and we thought it was time to come and visit the city councils and let everybody know how we were doing. To Bruce's point, it has been a process. Alameda County formed a steering committee with almost 40 members. There's a representative from each of the participating cities, as well as representatives appointed by members of the Board of Supervisors from different stakeholder groups. So it's been robust, interesting, but you know, a lot of folks were initially a little overwhelmed at the size of the process, but I think in the end it'll turn out to have proven to be a very positive result. So I'll just draw your attention to the slides we have. Community choice energy is pretty simple concept to explain. For the last 100 years or so, the investor-owned utility that serves the area, PG&E, has procured or generated power, transmitted it over their infrastructure, their power lines, and delivered it to your home, and came out when the lights went out or a bill and everything else. And so since 2002 in California, cities have been able to actually come together and take over the first part of that transaction. And so that's what community choice energy is. Communities come together, take over the purchase and procurement, and hopefully in the future the generation of electricity, which then in partnership with PG&E is delivered over their infrastructure to your home or business. And I'd like to say at the outset, you know, we like to characterize our relationship with PG&E as a partnership, a positive one, because they provide a tremendous service in this process. And I also like to point out that their profits that are guaranteed by law as a monopoly utility are actually embedded in the transmission of the electricity, that middle piece that you see there. So there's no financial harm done to PG&E by communities like ours coming together to take this over. So lots of benefits, potential, depends on the community and how interested and involved it wants to be in this process. I'll just point out that the Joint Powers Agency, as you know, is governed by generally by elected officials from each of the participating cities. So just like tonight, if the JPA comes together to talk about policy or purchase electricity, the meetings are open to the public. public can be engaged in that process to the extent that they wish to. Other highlights, here in the Bay Area, we're very concerned about things like climate change and greenhouse gas emissions. This gives us an opportunity to purchase electricity with much higher renewable energy content, fewer greenhouse gas emissions, and hopefully always be able to provide the electricity at a price that's competitive with PG&E. Important to note that the whole program is supported by the revenues generated by the sale of electricity, so there are no taxpayer subsidies or needs in order to make the program work. So 2002, the law went into effect. 2010, Marin Clean Energy launched the first program. So it took 8 years for that first program to come together and actually work. But since then, Sonoma Clean Power, the City of Lancaster have launched, and just this week, the City and County of San Francisco. We expect that San Mateo County will be delivering electricity to its customers, or providing electricity to its customers sometime later this year. And then on the right, you see all the counties that are in various phases of actually exploring the possibilities. And for the most part, they're all heading in the same direction. Energy prices are, especially on the renewable side, are really good right now, and so it's a good time to get into the market for that. Everybody's involved here in the 9 Bay Area counties, with the exception of Solano, although the city of Benicia did join Marin Clean Energy a year or so ago. But everybody else is working on it right now. In Alameda County, we mentioned that the Board of Supervisors was actually the champion, if you will, for community choice energy, and they put up the initial funding to help get this underway. And at some point in the next month or two, probably sometime in June, the Board of Supervisors will get the results of the technical study, make a decision as to whether or not they will go or not go on it. And assuming that they do say yes, then they have indicated a commitment to fund the second phase of this process. All the cities in Alameda County are involved except for the city of Alameda, that is ineligible because it has its own municipal utility. And we're very close to completion of the tech study. In fact, we have a few slides with some preliminary data that I'll show you in a minute. But first, I just wanted to mention that you don't have to read all this right now, but we went through a very rigorous process with our steering committee over the goals that we wanted to establish for a community choice program. And so you'll see 1 through 3 are basically, you know, competitive rates, lower greenhouse gases, and higher renewable energy content. But then when you get 4 through 8, we're starting to look at economic development, opportunities for energy efficiency and demand response programs, working with communities that you know, can benefit from the jobs that may be developed from this. So this is sort of the guidelines that our steering committee established to help us work through this process. So for the 3 programs that are up and running, I just point out here that for 2015, all 3 programs offered a basic product at a price that was below PG&E, and you'll see Marin Clean Energy's power content was 56% renewable, Sonoma and Lancaster a little bit less, and all programs offer an optional 100% renewable program that you can opt up to for a small additional premium. Revenues from Marin and Sonoma are healthy. The green numbers there indicate their projected net revenues, which mean that that's money that can be used by the Joint Powers Authority, the governing board, to either decide to stabilize rates, offer special energy efficiency programs. There are a host of things that the program can actually do that have a nexus to energy. Sonoma Clean Power is trying to incentivize electric vehicle purchases and everything, so they're providing incentives for that. All the programs so far are offering a little bit more on your solar at home or your business, where if you over-generate, you actually make a little bit more than you would with PG&E. So we know about the JPA. The city attorneys have all been engaged with the county attorney, I think, at this point. There are lots of good discussions going on about what that JPA structure will look like, and importantly, how it will be governed. Important to note that if a city like Emeryville decides to be a part of this program, once it forms and is launched, then everybody in Emeryville is a customer of the program. So every business, every resident becomes a customer. But there are plenty of opportunities given to everyone in the city to opt out and remain with PG&E. So that's another benefit that comes with this, is that today we actually have a choice about who provides our energy. So if folks want to stay with PG&E, they're encouraged to do so, and they can opt out at no cost prior to the launch of the program, and then for a very nominal cost once the program is actually launched. Things like programs for care customers remain the same. The California Public Utilities Commission still retains a certain amount of oversight over the program. And I'm going to talk about this PCIA exit fee charge in a moment when we get into the sort of the liabilities issue or risks. When you get your bill, it comes from PG&E, and the only real difference you see on it is that the charges for the electricity, that's the part the program provides, and then the cost for the transmission of that electricity are split out into separate numbers, just so that you can see what those costs are. For cities interested in how this might help their climate action plan goals, this is from the city of San Mateo, but all the cities show pretty much the same thing, that if by switching to a community choice program, it's the single biggest thing you can do to reduce your greenhouse gas emissions. By far, it's probably the easiest thing to do in some ways, but also has the most impact. So the risks involved, we always want to make sure we highlight them, because this is not entirely risk-free. Energy is a very volatile market. Prices go up, prices go down. You have to make sure that you have very good people working for you in terms of purchasing, so that you're making sure that you're getting the best possible price in a way that ensures that especially on the price, because you want to make sure that the price is competitive with PG&E. Otherwise, you run the risk of lots of customers opting out to go with a cheaper product. There are always political and regulatory issues that come into play. We had an effort a couple of years ago to change this from an opt-out program, which I described a moment ago, to an opt-in program, which would have made it almost impossible to form a community choice program. They would have had to have gone out and tried to recruit people to join the program. That bill never made it to the governor's desk. But there are those kinds of things that we always have to keep an eye on. As the community choice programs build, there are more and more participants in this process that are lobbying at the legislature and the Public Utilities Commission to make sure that customers are well protected. So we're in the process of completing the tech study, but the two pieces of our tech study that are very different from others is that we've also taken a hard look at what kind of economic development possibilities exist for a community choice program here. You get into some interesting territory in Alameda and Contra Costa counties, because we have, unlike Marin, that's kind of space constrained with all their protected areas, and Sonoma that has a lot of ag land, we have a lot of industrial land that's probably never going to be repurposed. There are lots of brownfield sites and that kind of thing, where there's actually an opportunity over time to be able to exploit those resources in a way that probably would never happen otherwise. Good example is Marin Clean Energy is just started work on a 10.5 megawatt project at a Chevron brownfield site in Richmond. They also have, Richmond has a local hire requirement, so 50% of the jobs that are developed there will actually go to Richmond residents. Also, we're looking very closely at how energy efficiency can help the program to be successful. Just here's the tech study, some of the highlights so far. You can see from this that our East Bay Community Energy, that's Alameda County, would be by far the largest program so far in the state. And you can see in the column on the right the number of gigawatt hours that are consumed here in the county. We have a very large industrial base, and as a result, we use a lot of energy in Alameda County. Here's how it kind of breaks up by jurisdiction. I apologize that Emeryville is not shown. But you know, there are other cities of a similar size like Albany and some of the others that sort of fit into that others. And in a way, you should sort of be proud of that. I mean, you don't have a big footprint here in Emeryville. Here's how it breaks down by customer class. So you can see the large industrial and residential pretty similar. Then you get into medium and small commercial, and we've got a little bit of ag out in the eastern part of the county. So we're on a kind of a fast track after 2 years of working through this process. Now we're all becoming very anxious to see if we can get this program going. Some of us think that maybe spring of 2017 is a little ambitious. We have to come back out and do this all over again in the very near future to talk to you about the results of the tech study, the JPA agreement, any of the issues that may come up around there, so that you're becoming much more engaged in this process than you have been in the last couple of years. We're doing as much public outreach as we can to the cities, but at some point we have to start turning our attention to the public and other stakeholders, the business community, so that we actually get out in front of the launch so that people know what this is, rather than wondering or worrying about what it is after the fact if they haven't heard about it. As I said, Alameda County is handling the startup funding. If the program goes forward, then they will be repaid for those payments that they've made, but there'll be no request in this county, at least, for support from local cities. So we'd encourage you to come to our steering committee meetings. They're always very interesting. We hold them at the Castro Valley Library every first Wednesday of the month, and the importance of that, and I have to say that the cities have been really good about maintaining their presence there, is that in a way it's kind of the training ground for the folks that are actually going to be participating in this process. I mean, you can't go from not knowing anything about community choice to suddenly being on the board. I mean, you could, but you want to know how this works, and you want to have city staff that are participating and understand how it works, so that by the time you have to come to a point where you're making decisions about some really big things, you're really feeling pretty comfortable about that. Let's see. So I mentioned the go, no-go, tentative date for cities to determine whether or not they'll participate is the end of October. Some counties didn't always get every city to join right away. There are some cities that were hesitant and decided to wait to see how things kind of played out before they actually committed. That happened both in Marin and Sonoma, where now all cities are participants. I mean, that's always an option. In fact, there's always an option not to participate, too. It isn't just because the county is kind of leading this. Every individual city has the ability to decide whether it wants to participate or not. And that's it. It's over.
Great. Thank you so much. Do we have any clarifying questions?
I just had I met somebody who is selling a lot of commercial power users peak demand technology, meaning that literally some commercial users are buying big batteries so that they will cruise through peak demand on battery power.
Yeah.
That's kind of remarkable to me. This is some new approach that we're quickly changing our way that we're going to be using power.
So there is state law that requires that a certain percentage of power is stored. So that's part of the motivation. And I should have mentioned before that the state of California has this renewable portfolio standard that requires us to get to 33% renewable by 2020 and 50% renewable by 2030. Without that kind of legislation in place, there wouldn't be as much incentive for everybody to try and head in that direction. So you're right on the battery storage, and that's big. I mean, nobody really knows where it's going at this point, but certainly shaving peak demands, which is one of the most critical parts of an energy transaction, you know, trying to keep those spikes nice and smooth or low, is where energy storage is going to play a big role.
I have a question.
Sure.
The city of Emeryville looked into this in the earlier 2000s and basically got cold feet because of the risks involved. And one of the issues for us at that time was that 70% of our properties are commercial, and commercial electricity is charged at a much lower rate than residential, and so we weren't sure that there'd be a financial incentive for people to. So can you talk about our specific composition and why it would make sense?
Well, first of all, Marin Clean Energy, for example, we don't have a slide on it in this deck, but shows the different customer categories, like non-residential, residential, just to show you what their savings are under different scenarios. And so their board has decided to make sure that all the pricing is competitive with PG&E so that they retain those commercial customers. It's actually, you want to do that because large commercial users of electricity are important to the development and stability of a program. I mean, it takes a lot of residential customers to get what one big large user can do for you. So that's part of what the board will be able to do, is to look at how the pricing structure is made so that to the extent possible, commercial customers are also getting the benefit of lower rates, and important for a lot of commercial customers is rates that don't change 3 or 4 times a year. I mean, so far the programs that are in existence adjust their prices once a year. And so that, for a commercial user or business user, is important to know because they know what their bills are going to be for the next year.
When can you come back to us with a proposed JPA structure?
That's actually already on the table. Mr. Gina, I don't know if you've had time to
look
at that document.
So the, as he says, the county council had met with the city attorneys from the various cities. There have been they've had 2 scheduled meetings, and I've attended one of the meetings. So right now, where Emeryville is we've received the draft of the JPA agreement that was prepared by the county. The various cities in the county are reviewing that agreement, and then we'll begin negotiating with the county about the setup for the formation of the JPA, the various powers and authorities, the voting, how that happens. So from my perspective, we are just at the beginning of negotiating that JPA agreement with the county and the other Alameda County cities. I'm not prepared at this point to present any sort of recommendation to you because it's still very much a work in progress on the staff level.
Yeah.
Okay. Tom, I have some questions. Would you be able to, just for the edification of viewers at home and the folks in the audience, talk a little bit about the PCIA fees, the exit fees?
Thank you. And I didn't avoid that because I don't like to talk about it, but it's really one of the most important
I
things.
figured you get asked this in every city you go to.
So imagine this, PG&E, electricity contracts are purchased over generally longer terms. So you buy 20-year contracts, 10-year contracts, 5, and then you get something shorter for when you need peak power and that kind of thing. So PG&E has successfully argued that when a community leaves and goes to a community choice program, all that electricity that they bought on your behalf, they're stuck with it. They don't have a customer for it anymore. And so they've convinced the Public Utilities Commission that they're entitled to a departing load charge, or a PCIA charge, which is basically you continuing to pay for that electricity that PG&E is stuck with, essentially. So that's the basics of it. But here's the thing. The formula for how that's all done is very opaque. Nobody really knows how they come up with the numbers, because some of the information that goes into that calculation is proprietary. So right now, there's a big movement on at both the state legislature and the CPUC to open that process up so that we can actually see what's there and start to come up with some strategies for minimizing what that PCIA charge might be in the future. So for example, now PG&E anticipates that Alameda County and many of its cities are going to depart, and so they're not buying this in the same way that they did previously, because they don't expect you to be their customer. So it's very much in flux, but what the programs have been trying to do is continue to adjust the pricing so that even with the added PCIA charge, they're still at or below PG&E prices. But that's one of the things that new programs are going to have to deal with, are these kinds of efforts to encourage people maybe to stay with PG&E.
So it just seems a little unfair if I understand if we're not privy to certain information, but it seems unfair that ratepayers would be subjected to this fee that has a nebulous out date and maybe no out date at the moment.
That's the other problem, is that we don't know when it ends.
Right. So it will be interesting to see when we get the feasibility study if we can keep those rates comparable or competitive, including the exit fees. But I understand we have a new ratepayers advocate at the PUC. Is that
they finally staffed up and they've put some money into that budget and everything. So, and they're very supportive of community choice, whereas this transition from the way things have been forever has been hard for the PUC and the legislature and the IOUs. They're trying to get to adjust to all this, and sometimes the tendency is to try and hang on to what you had. But I mean, if you really look at how things are going, I mean, we're going in a whole new direction with renewable energy storage and this kind of thing. And unless the utilities and everybody else starts to figure out how to get into that game, they're actually going to harm themselves in the long run, in my opinion.
Right. Okay. Any further questions? Doesn't look like it. I'll open it up for public comment.
I just want to warn you that there is no free lunch in energy. We would like to have a comparison study of the dollar invested with the watt produced. And it's very difficult to come up ahead of what has been established by the energy company that have used fossil fuel, because the efficiency of their generating power has increased, especially lately. And they have preview reserve because, as you know, the area is going to be equipped with the bullet train, and those 200 miles an hour train need really lots of energy for the launch, for the acceleration. And the renewable energy like the solar cell and wind and all that just do not provide that type of boost for the launch. And so as an alternative, we could depend on it to a certain limit, and also remember that the storage battery is also no free lunch. Each time the cycle goes down, you lose a little bit. This is part of the chemistry that activates the storage battery. And if you want to use another type of energy conservation, like compressed air or something like that, and you lose in a heat transfer from the container. So, with my experience with solar energy on the solar car and all that, I would caution the city to be very careful in making investment or promise of investment. You'll be running into disappointment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Carpio. If we don't have any further questions or discussion, this was mostly informational, and I hope you'll be coming back to us soon with some great news on the feasibility study, and then we'll have more evaluation to do of the proposed JPA. So we'll, and this is a very quick timeline for everything that's happening. So I thank you for coming. Thank you for your work, and we continue to we look forward to getting more good news from CCE. So thank you very much. And yes.
Madam Mayor, would it be possible for us to pick up on the city manager's report at this time?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, the individuals are present, and so I would like to call on Alameda Fire Chief Dave Winokur to come up to the podium and describe what event occurred today.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Tonight it happens to be the evening where we present our quarterly report, and in advance of that, we had an event today that these crews responded to that the city manager and I felt was worth bringing to your attention. This afternoon, in fact, during the department head meeting here at City Hall, Engine 34 was returning from a call westbound on Powell, and they noted a citizen standing on the guardrail of the Powell Street overcrossing on 80, and what appeared to be an imposter suggested that she was going to jump from the bridge. The engine immediately made the appropriate notifications with our partners with police and started an additional engine. Engine 35 responded from Hollis, came on scene. They established a traffic pattern to protect the scene. One of the members established dialogue from the street with the citizen, an attempt to ascertain and to calm. At the same time, several other members moved on foot up the embankment onto the freeway shoulder, which, as you all know, I'm sure better than most, that is a particularly dynamic section of freeway. And there's not a lot of shoulder there, and there's an awful lot of merging and cars moving in and out, a very dangerous location. They then moved north along the freeway while the member on the ground continued to engage the citizen. And at that point, they were presented with a very challenging situation. And as we all know, these can be very delicate. And there is a time and a place in public service, and the fire service specifically, for caution and due regard. And then there's also a time for action. And they felt, given the exposed and precarious nature of the citizen on the side of the freeway, the high rate of speed of the vehicles passing by, the merging effects of the lanes, and the very limited shoulder, that this was a time for action. They then moved very decisively and were able to remove the citizen from the opposite side of the guardrail, bring her back onto the freeway, and then facilitated follow-on care and transfer. This is one of those events that, in my opinion, this was the right answer for how to resolve this issue. And that given the very dynamic nature of the freeway there, the very precarious position that the citizen was in, this was a time for action. That is not a decision that is made lightly by these crews or by our department. And I wanted to recognize and applaud them for their very decisive action that mitigated the situation and removed the citizen from a very dangerous position. Without any further ado, station Engine 34 and Engine 35 crews.
Thank you.
Very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Outstanding work.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Back to our regularly scheduled items. Item 8.2, the presentation of the 2016, 2017, and 2017-2018 General Fund Baseline Budget and Reserve Policy. And coming to present, we have two Susans.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. Tonight we will present the baseline budget. The baseline budget is the first step in developing the operating budget. Susan, Mayor, over here, Michelle, and the department heads work together to produce the baseline budget. On April 25th, the two budget committees met and provided great recommendations to the staff. And those comments are incorporated into tonight's PowerPoint presentation. This is a collaborative budget development process. I want to say that the city is in a strong financial position. It has solid reserve. On May 24th, we'll come back with a balanced two-year budget with enhancement in services. Now I will turn over to Susan Mayer for the presentation.
Good evening, Council. I am here to present the baseline budget. And what we're going to do tonight, we've designed this presentation to give you context for evaluating the financial capacity of the city as it steps into the next budget cycle, the next two-year budget cycle. And by stepping through budget principles, your revenue and expenditure trends, and your fund balance projections, we hope to give you context for evaluating the department budget proposals that will come to you in workshops for the individual departments and also for the five-year CIP. So our theme tonight is context. The city is in an unusual financial condition because you have had strong operating results for the last two fiscal years, and you have accumulated a surplus. And so part of our presentation tonight is to discuss and present to you a framework for you to consider how to invest your surplus to advance your city mission. And we have 5 strategies to present to you. We're not asking you to make any spending or investment decisions tonight. We're presenting context and a framework for you to consider as you step through the different budget hearings and the individual department presentations. And so as you consider this, we will also talk about the calendar for the remaining weeks in May and in June as well. The City Council in the prior budget cycle adopted budget principles, and as a newcomer to the city, fresh to your budget process, I've looked at the budget principles and have to tell you, I think these really represent the best of municipal budgeting. And I'll step through a couple of these, and I truly think that the budget that is going to come before you really reflects and embraces these budget principles. And again, these are existing principles that were adopted by during your prior budget cycle. We want to focus on a sustainable budget where current expenditures are supported by current revenues. We want to be sure that sporadic or one-time revenues are invested in one-time purposes and that we aren't relying on those revenues to sustain your base services and payroll. We want to be sure that each of your programs have a prudent and appropriate fund balance reserve to protect you in case of economic uncertainties. Finally, and this was an important one, we want to be sure that you have identified your long-term unfunded liabilities and have a plan to address them and to move forward to amortize those over time. The Public Works Department and the Finance Department have teamed on the capital improvement projects and the 5-year program for the next year, and have identified some significant projects for your city that I think will meet your goals. And that CIP projects are to be presented to you in 2 weeks on May 17th. So what is a baseline budget? I want to clarify the difference between the baseline budget that you're seeing tonight and the proposed budget that you'll see in a couple weeks. This is the starting point for developing a budget strategy. We identify the projected revenues and basically your capacity to sustain or rebalance or augment services. We estimate what the costs are to sustain your current services. We're capturing the baseline before adding services or positions. So this is not the proposed budget. This is just simply the starting point to frame the discussion. So how does the budget look for the coming 2 years? And the reality is that despite your strong revenue growth, the expenditures, there is pressure on the expenditure side. And you will see when we get to the expenditure trend slide that there is a growing cost to sustain the existing services, primarily in the salary and benefit line and primarily in the pension line. And during the course of the evening, we will be presenting a strategy to address that growing pension cost. The budget does have a closing gap between revenues and expenditures in 2018. However, we have 2 policy options to present to you that will give you the opportunity to consider some flexibility that will bring you some additional capacity in the budget, present you with an opportunity to augment services, and walk away with a balanced budget. And so in 2 weeks, we will be coming back to you with a list of opportunities to augment services for the coming budget cycle. So let's start with the general revenues. What discretionary revenues are available to fund your services? And here's why I want to mention that we are talking about the general fund of the city. The city has dozens of funds, has many restricted programs, restricted grants, restricted fees. The focus on our conversation tonight is the discretionary money that is housed in your general fund. The other funds, the totality of the city budget, will be presented to you in the budget workshop on the 24th. But tonight we're just talking about the general fund, the discretionary funds. And the news on the revenues is very good. You have a favorable trend, and we expect you to exceed $40 million for the current 15-16 fiscal year. You have 2 particular sources that have grown beyond expectation, and that is, first, the property transfer tax. This is a new tax that has been implemented, and you've had some unusual and I would say infrequent commercial real estate transactions that have generated a large sum of one-time money on the property tax transfer tax line. You've also had some current development projects that have also contributed a sum of money on the revenue side. And so together, along with the other revenues, there's $4.7 million of budget surplus on the revenue side in the current fiscal year. And this gives you an opportunity to consider some strategies of how you want to invest those funds. And at this point, I'll introduce the first of the policy recommendations we'll discuss tonight, and that is recognizing the volatility in the commercial real estate property transfer tax. We'd like to introduce the concept that you invest on an ongoing basis the commercial portion of the property transfer tax when it happens into your CIP program. And by doing this, you match the one-time revenues with expenditures you can control, because you can control the timing of your long-term CIP program. You can decide how and when you award those contracts to accomplish your CIP goals. So this seems like a good match between a volatile revenue source and an expenditure program that you can control. The policy recommendations that we're making tonight will come back to you and be formalized for your consideration in the budget resolution. This is the first of the recommendations we're making. This is a chart that details and shows you the components of the $40 million of revenues for the current year. And we've highlighted the 2 areas and shown you how significant they are that had growth this year. The license and permits have grown from $2 million to $6 million over a 2-year period. The real property transfer tax has grown from less than $500,000 to almost $3 million in this particular year. So again, this is generating one-time surplus of $4.7 million. We don't believe this is sustainable, and we don't recommend that you budget to this high of a level in the next 2 coming years. We want you to consider a budget that is sustainable, that you can count on to pay employee salaries and other reoccurring operating expenditures. This chart shows you the trends of revenues over a 5-year period, including the past 2 years and then going forward into the next 2-year budget cycle. You can see that revenues were less than $35 million 2 years ago, and the current year are expected to exceed $40 million. And here's where I'd like to focus on how the revenues are more conservatively projected for the next 2 cycles. In fact, they're close to $37, $38 million. And in the coming 17 year, there are some current development projects that staff have identified that expect to come through. So as you can see, the 17 projection is actually even a little bit higher than the 18 projection. Again, the recommendation here is to very conservatively look at your revenues to be sure that these are thresholds you can achieve. Despite that, the revenues for both 17 and 18 are projected to exceed what they were in 2015. So you are still seeing growth in the baseline revenues. It's also appropriate to reflect on the components of your revenue and where they are sourced. This pie chart shows you the dependency of the city on the sales tax and the transient occupancy tax. Together, they comprise 40% of your revenues. And the property tax is actually a very small 7% of the total. This shows you how susceptible you are to economic cycles. And so again, we present this to just remind us the volatility that the city could face as it goes through different economic cycles. And it also speaks to the reason that we're recommending such a significant 50% contingency reserve, and we'll get to that as we look at the fund balance recommendations. But again, this is to reflect on the source of where those revenues are coming from. So now let's move on to the general fund expenditures. And what is the cost to maintain your current service levels? So what are the highlights? All of your departments are operating within budget for the 2016 fiscal year. We're expecting expenditures to be at $32 million, and we're expecting a $1.4 million budget surplus on the expenditure side. Where are these savings coming from? Staff vacancies, professional services, and the delay in opening in the new community center, the ECCL. I do want to point out one area that is a change from the budget, and again, this is not an unexpected cost, but it's an updated strategy on how to address that cost. The council has adopted a PERS reserve to fund the long-term PERS pension benefits of the city. When it adopted the budget for the current cycle that we're in, it assumed that it would be paying for its fire pension liabilities out of that reserve. During the budget cycle, we have new news from CalPERS about a change in their investment earnings assumption. And it gives us pause and concern about drawing down on the existing reserves. In fact, our recommendation is the opposite. We're recommending that you augment your pension reserves. And so because you have current year capacity, the payment on the fire pension liability, we're recommending you take from current operating budgets and not draw down the reserve as originally planned. We'll be talking more about the pension liability, but I just wanted to point out that's a change from the original budget plan. We're going to recommend you maintain the PERS reserve and not draw down on that reserve during the 16 fiscal year. This chart shows the expenditure category, and I do want to note the growth in the expenditures. In the 15 fiscal year, you were at almost a $32 million expenditure level. The cost to maintain your current service levels will be growing to $38 million by the time we get to 2018. And in particular, I want to highlight the growth in the salary and benefits, and in particular, the pension liability. And just what is the pension liability? This is the actuarial losses over time. The city contributes to CalPERS every year based on an actuarial recommendation. And over time, the actuaries make assumptions. And over time, retirees are living longer. The investments may not have performed as planned. And when you add up all the differences in the actuarial projections, we have what's called the unfunded pension liability. And we have some slides that show you the magnitude of the liability. But right now, this year, in this budget cycle, you can anticipate paying a debt service payment on that liability of $2.1 million. This is not the normal cost that is paying for the current service credits earned by current employees. This is the payment on the unfunded liability. It's amortizing the unfunded liability. And you can see how this is growing over time to over $2 million. The word that the industry, the municipal industry is using is crowding out. this pension payment is crowding out the ability of the city to deliver other services, as this pension payment absorbs an increasing amount of the revenues. Fortunately, you have had revenue growth that is allowing you to continue sustaining this. But tonight we have some strategies we want to recommend to you that will give you the opportunity to reduce this pension payment in the future by buying down and using some of your one-time surplus monies to advance fund your pension liability, which will create some additional capacity in your operating budget to restore services. So let's tie it together by looking at the fund balance projection. What happens when we look at the comparison between revenues and expenditures? And here's where I'd like to point out, in both the 15 and the 16 fiscal years of your current budget cycle, you have strong operating results. You have revenues that are exceeding expenditures, and as a result, you are accumulating fund balance surplus that will be available for you to make investment decisions. As we march into 2017 and 18, you can see where this gap closes. And in fact, the baseline budget, if you change nothing, continue your current plan, the expenditures actually exceed revenues by 2018. We have two proposals for you tonight that will allow you to change that dynamic and create additional capacity in the 18 fiscal year. So where does that leave us? When I last spoke to you last December, the Finance Department presented to you the audited financial statements for 2015. We showed you a fund balance reserve of $26 million, and we showed you how that compared to your policies that were in place at that time. And since then, we have had a series of additional good news that will allow you to grow that fund balance surplus from $26 million to $42 million. And those three particular items are the 2016 operating results, the net surplus of revenues over expenditures, which are over $7 million. In addition, the State Department of Finance has approved the repayment by your successor agency to your city of a housing loan. You're very familiar with the wind down of redevelopment, and as part of that dissolution process, you had a loan on the books. The city had advanced money to the redevelopment agency, and as part of the wind down process, the Department of Finance has now, with the 1617 ROPS, has approved the repayment of that loan to the city. And this is a repayment to your housing fund, but your housing fund had in turn borrowed from your general fund to finance the acquisition of parcels on the Christie Avenue. And so as a result, you're going to get this money back in 1617, and this will augment your general fund available balance by $6.9 million. These are large one-time sums of money that create a tremendous opportunity for you to consider for investment. There's one last item we'd like to discuss. Your vehicle fund is also performing ahead of plan and has accumulated a surplus. The vehicles that you have at the city have a replacement schedule, and those vehicles are being properly funded. But despite that, there's an additional $1 million that we're recommending be distributed back to the general fund that will add additional capacity here for your investment. So the sum of these three items are adding $15 million to your fund balance. And so the discussion we'd like to start with you tonight is, how do we best strategize that $42 million? We have a framework to present to you, and actually you might remember that back in December when we presented the CAFR to you, we introduced this framework, and we identified 5 areas where you might choose to allocate these monies. And we'd like to step through these with you and suggest dollars to allocate to each of these categories. These are proposals for your consideration. We're here to get your feedback tonight to see if we're in line with your values, and we will hold that discussion until after you've heard from your departments and what their budget recommendations are for the year. And then as you consider your budget resolution, we will ask you to take action to earmark these funds. In none of these cases are we actually asking you to spend money or approve expenditures. We're asking you to consider earmarking the fund balance that you have to achieve different policy objectives. So the first investment strategy we would like to consider is economic development and growing for the future. One of the updates to this came from the committee meeting 2 weeks ago, and we were asked to add land banking as a council priority for this category. So investment strategy number 1 is growing for the future with economic development. You actually have an existing policy right now to allocate a portion of the tax increment surplus that comes back to your city towards economic development. And what do I mean by tax increment? When redevelopment was dissolved, we've gone through a few years, a period where the successor agency has been paying down its obligations. And we're almost to the point where the only remaining obligation will be your bonded indebtedness. And so the agency's need for tax increment revenue is diminishing and stabilizing. We now expect that the city as a whole will begin to receive a predictable $4 million a year in tax increment surplus. And this will grow over time as properties continue to grow. But right now, at the current level, we expect you to have about $4 million a year. Your existing policy allocates 5% of those monies to economic development, which will be about $200,000 a year. For the last 3 years, that reserve has not been funded. So our first recommendation to you is to invest $730 to catch up 3 years of deposits, and then to reaffirm and continue that 5% allocation going forward. We're not recommending specific economic development programs. We'll leave that to your economic development staff to come back with you for ways to invest this money. But we're recommending that you earmark these monies for economic development. Our second investment strategy has to do with the capital improvement program. And we have recommendations for you both for reserves and also the allocation of future revenues. So let's start with the reserves. We're recommending 2 reserves. And to put this in context, the city is supporting and maintaining over $50 million of capital assets. And that does not include the streets and roads. That's just your buildings and your facilities. In addition, you'll be considering a $100 million CIP program when the CIP comes to you in 2 weeks. So we're recommending 2 reserves to help you demonstrate fiduciary responsibility for the care of those assets. And the first is an infrastructure reserve to acknowledge that these assets require care and maintenance and present a risk. We want to be sure that you have the capacity to maintain those assets as needs arise over time. We're recommending that of your general fund surplus, $5 million be transferred to create an infrastructure reserve within your capital fund. We're not recommending that reserve be spent, but it's available for you to address CIP issues as they come along. We're also recommending an implementation reserve with a proposed CIP budget of over $100 million and with some very large projects in particular. And by large projects, we're talking about the Bayfront Bridge, the Transit Center, the Courtyard, and the Art Center. These are all very large projects for which the final costs are not yet known. So we're recommending that 2.5% or $2.5 million be earmarked to give you contingency to make sure that you and your staff can deliver those projects as planned, despite cost fluctuations that might happen. The $5 million is recommended to come from the general fund. The $2.5 million is recommended to come out of your existing capital fund. And so again, these are reserve recommendations. With respect to revenues for your capital program, you have had an existing policy to allocate 70% of your residual tax increment to the capital program. And as a result, you have built up a surplus in your capital fund, and you are well situated to fund many capital projects in the next 5 years. However, your general fund is not able to restore the services that have been cut in the past years. And so at this time, we're recommending a swap and that you reallocate 25% of that tax increment surplus to go back to the general fund to begin to augment the positions and services that have been cut over the years. And so again, this is a change to your boomerang. I'm sorry, I shouldn't. Boomerang is the informal word that is used to describe the tax increment surplus, the money that is boomeranging from the redevelopment agency back to the city. So this is a policy. However, we don't want to leave the CIP program high and dry, and so in exchange for that $1 million per year of tax increment surplus, this is where the commercial property transfer tax comes back in. We're exchanging and giving to the general fund a predictable property-based revenue stream that you can count on to pay salaries, and we're exchanging it for a volatile, occasional commercial property transfer tax. And so it's recognizing that the CIP does still need revenues on an ongoing basis, but it's making a swap with the general fund for a predictable revenue with an unpredictable revenue. So these are the recommended proposals for the capital revenue funding. Moving on to the third of our 5 investment strategies, we'd like to talk now about the unfunded benefit obligations. And here we're talking about pension and retiree health. The city has already put in place and has well-funded its retiree health program. It's established a trust and has resources set aside to fund that trust. Less progress has been made on the pension side, so our recommendations tonight are focused on pension, with a number 1 objective of using your existing reserves to buy down your obligations so that we can reduce the annual burden on your operating budget. We want to mitigate the future rate increases. We want to invest one-time monies to create capacity in the operating budget. I wanted to remind you, and this is a slide that we introduced to you last December, I wanted to remind you that your CalPERS board has taken action to phase in a change in the investment rate assumption. This is key because a good portion of your active and your retiree pensions will be paid from investment income. We put away money today, watch it grow, and then the money is there in the future when your employees have retired and are drawing their pension. The impact of the CalPERS change to drop from a 7.5 to a 6.5% will add $20 million to your liability. You'll be growing from your current net pension liability of $25 million, we'll be adding $20 million to come up to $45 million. This is a significant increase. Now, I want to make a couple of comments here. When we discuss these obligations, we're talking about the net pension liability that was presented in the 2015 CAFR. And these are using the accounting valuation rules. They're slightly more conservative than the CalPERS funding valuation, so I just want to differentiate. There are 2 different measurement structures. This is using the accounting structures as presented in your financial statements and your CAFR. The other thing I want to mention is that CalPERS intends to phase this change in over a long period of time, 20 years. It doesn't change the net impact that the city of Emeryville will need to fund this additional obligation over time. And so we're looking at a $25 million liability as measured with the 7.5 earnings assumption. As CalPERS phases in, the change in investments will be up to $45 million. So the strategy question is, what can the city do now to mitigate these liabilities, provide for the future, recognize that it has these obligations, and to pay it down so that your operating budget is not crowded out by a growing debt service payment. Just to emphasize the current burden, if you do nothing, the $2.1 million debt service payment is impacting your program departments in this structure. Almost $1 million for police, almost $1 million for fire. And this is for the firefighters that are no longer employees of your city, right? But you are still paying into the pension plan for your former employees. And then there's a smaller amount for the employees in the other departments. But this is a large portion of your operating budget. And again, this is the debt service with the 7.5 liability. As that investment assumption goes down to 6.5, these numbers will just increase. And so again, we want to recommend a strategy that will allow you to reduce this portion of your budget. The policy that we're recommending, and again, we're not asking you to make a decision at this time. In fact, even with the budget adoption, we'll only be asking you to earmark funds. But we're recommending that staff research and come back to you with a proposal to set up a trust fund similar to what you've already done for your retiree health. The city has a Section 115 trust fund for its retiree health. It's held by PARS, and you have already funded that. And so we're asking that you consider doing the same thing for your pension liabilities. And some of the key features of this trust was that it would be under your control. We're not recommending that you put the money into your pension plans at CalPERS because many of your plans are pooled with other governments. We want you to maintain control of your assets and that you control the timing of how and when you use those pension assets to address your pension payments to CalPERS. By putting this into a Section 115, and when I say section, I'm referring to an IRS code section. It's a restricted trust. The money would need to be used for pension. But again, you would control the timing. It allows you to invest in a long-term view. To the extent that you're holding your cash right now in your fund balance in your city investment pool, the government code limits your ability to invest with a short or midterm view. Because these are assets you want to pay for long-term obligations, you have the opportunity to invest this just as you do with your retiree health trust and as CalPERS does with your existing CalPERS contributions with a longer view with the potential for a higher return. And so the city would be in the fortunate situation where they would have a trust of funds restricted for pension that you could draw on as needed to address your CalPERS obligations. You already have a current reserve of $5 million in your general fund. We're recommending an additional $10 million, and so that you would achieve a $15 million contribution to the trust, which would have the effect of buying down a third of your pension liability. There are a few cities who are in the fortunate situation to even consider such a strategy, and this would really set you ahead of your neighboring jurisdictions with this funding strategy. $15 million is a large sum of money. And so again, at this point, we're introducing the concept. We want you to consider earmarking the funds, but then we would task staff to come back with you and investigate and make recommendations on different service providers. CalPERS has had a report to their board, and they are considering implementing such a vehicle, this type of trust, but there are other service providers, including the PARS system that you already work with, and there are others as well. And so there are, I'm sure, pros and cons of any of those. Again, the action that we're asking for you to do in this budget cycle is to earmark the funds for your future investment. Strategy number 4 of the 5 focuses on community programs. So far, we've talked about capital projects, we've talked about pension, but we wanted to be sure in considering a balanced approach that some money was set aside for direct community programs, with a focus in particular on cultural arts. And there are 2 recommendations here. One is to contribute an additional $1 million to the Art Center project. This is an important community asset, and as I understand it, will create meeting space for your community and contribute to the quality of life. And so an extra $1 million in that project can enhance the build out of that facility. In addition, we're recommending $400,000 be put into a pool to support community programs. And this is one-time money, but it could be spread out over a series of years to sustain classes or other programs that your community services department could come back and propose to you. For example, you could spend $80,000 for 5 years, you could spend $100,000 for 4 years. It would be a pool of money that could augment services for your community. The last strategy that we'll discuss with you is planning for the unexpected, and this sets up contingency reserves. You have an existing contingency reserve policy. You call it your economic uncertainty reserve. The reserve is a little bit vague the way it's currently worded, and we'd like to strengthen the wording to commit a full 50% of your annual expenditure budget into a reserve. And again, I want you to reflect back on the slide that we discussed that showed the components of your revenue, where such a large portion of your revenue comes from sales tax and hotel tax, and how susceptible you are to the economic cycles. So as a result, a 50% reserve is very appropriate for a city of this size and a general fund of this size, and this would take an $18 million commitment. To recap, you ended 2015 with $26 million of reserves. We believe that when you close the books for 2016, you'll be at $42 million. And so our recommendations tonight propose an allocation of $15 million to these series of reserves to accomplish these 5 investment strategies. And again, this is a framework for your consideration. If any of these areas are areas that you value more or less than are proposed, you certainly have the flexibility to move these dollars around. But these are the 5 areas that we recommend you consider as a framework for investing in the future. I'd like to wrap up by just looking at the calendar. As we step through May, you'll be presented with, first, the Capital Improvement Program on May 17th. On May 24th, the departments will be back with their proposals for staffing augmentations and service augmentations. And then as we move into June, we'll be looking at adoption of the final budget. But that financial planning won't end there, because then as you close the books for the new year and look at ongoing revenue trends, there's an opportunity for mid-cycle updates and development of a longer-term financial plan. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions that the council has on these slides.
Thank you for that great presentation, Susan. Are there any questions from council?
Well, I think Jack and I sat through this a week ago, and I don't have any questions, but I do want to commend everyone that worked on this particular report. I think you've got some sound, good ideas on there that they're going to put the city on the right track in the coming years. So we really appreciate the work you've done.
Yeah, thank you to staff. And I'd also like to have a copy of the PowerPoint emailed to me, if you could. Thanks.
It doesn't look like there are any questions. I
have a question. Where does this leave the ongoing increase of the cost of doing business? Personnel costs or whatever. I didn't hear about that, really.
The policy proposals will create additional capacity by doing 2 things. By transferring $1 million of your tax increment surplus, you'll cross the line where revenues will again exceed expenditures. And the second thing is, by buying down your pension liability, you'll be able to reduce the operating contribution for pension and reduce your expenditures. So we'll be creating capacity in your operating budget by increasing revenues and decreasing expenditures. So you'll have an opportunity to augment services.
Do you have a strategy for the $30 million left in unfunded liabilities?
I think that buying down 1/3 of it is a fabulous start.
Yeah.
So normal cities get so much more of their income from property tax, but we're likely to become more normal as we go on in that regard. Wouldn't you say that would be true, that maybe 10 years from now a larger percentage of our income is most likely to come from property tax?
Not until you change Prop 13.
Yeah, that's not happening. Because commercial properties aren't reassessed in the same way, and we're largely commercial, right? We don't have a lot of residential.
We hope that your sales tax continues to grow as well as your property tax.
Okay.
So I have another, this is a really, this is a remarkably rosy position to be in. I can't remember being on the council and being in such a nice position as we are right now. So excuse my shock, for lack of a better word, of being able to do things.
And we have that $20 million of more unfunded liabilities.
Yeah.
And yet we're in this rosy position.
So thank you for presenting your suggestions in a very cogent and coherent fashion. When we try to get money out of the state, we have a very frugal governor who doesn't want to spend money on things, and he's already talking about the next dip in the economy. And I didn't really hear about anything about kind of hedging our bets when I mean, you mentioned this, the 2 things that are really susceptible to a downturn are the 2 income sources we rely the most on. So I'm a little uncertain. I love the idea of the commercial property transfer tax going to the CIP. That makes a lot of sense to me. But I'm just concerned about just meeting our other obligations in terms of doing business. So it's a comment. You don't need to respond to that. That's just my off-the-cuff reaction.
That's why we have all the reserves, Ruth.
That's right. Economic uncertainty.
Right.
Yeah.
Anchor to the windward.
Just in case there's any public hiding where I can't see them, I'll open this up for public comment. Okay, there's no public comment. I want to thank staff and Susan for preparing some very well thought out and sound policy suggestions.
Fabulous.
And I want to thank my colleagues Jack and Nora for sitting through 3 hours of vetting all of this before it came to us.
We like the budget.
Thank goodness you like the budget so well.
We love it.
And I have to commend Susan, Mayor, for your ability to communicate the intricacies of the thought into really understandable language. And I feel like this is the first time that I've enjoyed going through a budget. So I appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing more. And that's it. So that was item 8.2. We have nothing for item 9, city as housing successor. Item 10, communications and reports, department heads. We've got a nice chunk of a report from our planning director.
Well, it looks kind of lengthy, but it's actually only one thing.
Okay. Then make it fast.
All right. The Planning Commission met, of course, on April 28th, last week, I guess that was, and they had a study session on a proposed 6-unit townhouse project on Doyle Street, which will replace some existing housing units. They had a number of comments on that project. I would note that since this was just a study session, it's not appealable to the City Council, and ultimately, if this project goes forward, it will require approval by the City Council because it involves the demolition of some existing residential units. And that concludes my report. I'd be happy to respond to questions. I do have one other thing I would like to ask you all about. We are in the process of preparing the final environmental impact report for the Sherwin-Williams project, and that will consist of 2 documents. It will consist of the draft EIR that was previously published, and then what's called a response to comments document, which contains all the comments that we received, responses to all those comments, and any modifications that are needed to the draft EIR as a result of all of that. So the 2 documents together constitute the final EIR. My question to you is, when this ultimately comes to you, would you like how many of you would like hard copies, and how many of you are happy with electronic copies?
Electronic.
Nora would like hard copies of both documents, I assume.
All these electronic.
Anybody else?
Electronic.
Okay, so 1. Got that, Miru?
This thing. It's not the EIR, it's the response to comments.
Oh my gosh.
We'll get you a hard copy of it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Chief Winokur. You should always have the 2 engine companies here as your backup for the quarterly report. That was great.
Noting the hour, I may have a revolt in my hands if I required that. Again, noting the hour, the empty chairs, and the already packed bags, I'll keep this brief. Per month, in January we ran 180 calls, February 201, March 227, for a total of 607 calls. That compares with first quarter 2015, 574 calls. We see that same general, small but noticeable increase in call volume across all categories. Station 34 ran 159 distinct EMS calls. Station 35 ran 270 EMS calls. This is consistent with past years, with seeing significantly more calls at Station 35 due to their location east of the freeway. As in previous years, that got us to approximately 70% of our calls were EMS in nature. We had 4 minor fires in February, 2 fires that exceeded property loss of $5,000, 1 each in January and February. Estimated property loss for the quarter was approximately $32,000. Caveating that with estimation of fire loss is a very imperfect science. Lastly, we ran 136 false alarms. That compares with 128 during the same period in 2015, which I personally would attribute to that while there's lots of new construction, newer buildings beyond their initial periods don't tend to generate very many alarms, and that many of these are the same buildings, older stock with decaying systems, and the rains during this quarter tend to trigger more false alarms than we see during the drier month. Pending any questions from the council, that concludes my quarterly brief.
I have a quick question. This is a question really for Chief Rocha, but do you have any updates on the Paramedics Plus contract? And
so the RFP is still at County Health, and we're waiting on that to be released. There has been a pre-RFP approval has been given that will allow the pre-vetting of applicants or of organizations to be interested in applying. That will reduce the time frame of the process once this comes out. But we're still unchanged, waiting for the release of the RFP from County EMS.
Okay, thank you.
Chief, can I have a question? What happened to the lady or the person who was on the overpass?
So she was removed from the dangerous situation and then was transported for assessment and follow-on care.
Oh, very good.
I have a question. Do our ambulances go to the emergency room at Alta Bates or to Summit?
So it depends. The ambulance destination is based on a number of criteria. In a non-emergent setting, it has to do with the patient's request, within reason. A patient who is seen here and requests to be seen at a distant hospital bypassing similar facilities, that generally won't be honored unless it has to do with a provider issue. In emergent issues where either a trauma, a childbirth, a child, then it will have to do either with the specialty of the receiving hospital and then availability of beds. Hospitals, particularly in this area, can from time to time be on a divert status where they are impacted, not receiving additional patients, and that would influence the decision-making process regarding where they were received.
Okay, I mentioned this because Alta Bates emergency room is going to be closing, and so I'm not sure if we can get this on a public safety agenda, but we might want to talk about it at least at that level, and then as a council.
I hadn't heard that.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Are there any other department heads with reports? No. Okay, moving on to the exciting ABAG MTC proposed
Tell us about the drama,
merger.
I've been waiting all night for this.
Well, I'll do a quick synopsis. The county-wide people and the bigger cities are interested in option 7 of the consultant's report about how to go for having governance for the future merger, probable merger. Whereas the smaller cities are thinking about rallying together and supporting option 4, which would keep governance including the smaller cities. And I think that being the ABAG rep, I'm tempted to support the smaller cities having some choice in governance. Yep. And by you, all of you nodding your heads, yes, I will do that. Okay.
Vote your conscience.
I just wanted to say one other thing other than ABAG. I went to this marvelous organization called Sunrise. They had a fundraiser, and they are training youths to go around and evaluate energy inefficiencies in people's homes. And if we were to say yes to these people, I believe they could come to our city and at no cost go door to door and show.
We've done that in the past.
Years.
Okay.
I got the audit in my house
people are
before.
more with it than I credit for. I'm new to this game, and
You've done a
they're
number of
great.
years in a row.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
One thing that I'll report on is that I recently had the opportunity to do Legislative Action Day with the League of Cities and visit our legislators in Sacramento, went to the office of Tony Thurmond, the office of Lonnie Hancock, and got to advocate on behalf of bills that were in support of homelessness issues and affordable housing and workforce housing. And I will be traveling to Sacramento again, this time without League of Cities, just on behalf of the city of Emeryville. So if there are any issues that you would like me to bring forward with Senator Hancock or Assemblymember Thurmond, please send them my way. I believe Scott will be joining me as well, as will Carolyn. So we'll be there to represent the city if there's anything on your minds that you feel needs special attention. I'm sure Scott will be talking about microgrids. Yes, microgrids and batteries and the ability to have solar panels over residences and delivering power to adjacent businesses. But if there's anything like that on your minds, I would love to carry your message with me. And also, Assemblymember Chu and Assemblymember Thurmond, along with several other Assembly members, have introduced a $1.3 billion package that includes, homelessness issues, workforce housing. I wish they had a name for it. If you're going to introduce a package of bills that's $1.3 billion, you need marketing. So you'll be seeing that on a future agenda, a resolution in support, as well as letters to the governor and the Speaker of the Senate pro tem. So that's all I've got. And anyone else? This meeting is adjourned.